Welcome to the fiction world. Today we bring you an unforgettable story. What if Deku became the Dragon King in House of the Dragon and got a breeding harem with Rhaenyra, Alicent and Helaena? Loving our content? Smash that like button and join our family by subscribing. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, The Green Lightning. The sky ripped open like a wound and Izuku Midoriya fell through it. He'd been fighting, that much he remembered. A villain with some kind of space-time quirk, portals opening everywhere, his classmates scattered across the battlefield. He'd pushed too hard, gone for a decisive strike, and then the world turned inside out and he was falling through nothing, through everything, through colors that didn't have names and sounds that felt like tastes and impact. He hit wet sand hard enough to crater it, his body bouncing once before friction caught up with physics. Salt water flooded his mouth. Volcanic rock scraped against what remained of his hero costume. Everything hurt in that specific way that meant nothing was permanently broken, but his body was absolutely going to complain about this for days. Deku pushed himself up on shaking arms and spat out a mouthful of grit. His vision swam. The HUD in his mask was dead, cracked lens, no power. He pulled it off and blinked at the world. Wrong. Everything was wrong. The beach was black, volcanic sand stretching in both directions. Behind him, cliffs rose in jagged formations, and perched atop them was a castle. Not a Japanese castle. Not any kind of modern structure. This was medieval, brutal, ancient. Towers of dark stone reaching toward a sky choked with clouds. Smoke rose from somewhere within the walls, carrying the smell of sulfur and something else. Something alive. Okay, Deku muttered, getting his feet under him. His legs held. Good. Okay. Dimensional displacement. That's a thing that can happen. Ares' quirk works on time, so space isn't that different conceptually. I just need to figure out where I am and how to. The roar cut off his mumbling. It came from above, a sound so deep it vibrated in his chest cavity, and Deku's head snapped up just in time to see something impossible descending from the clouds. A dragon. An actual dragon. 40 feet of scaled muscle and leather wings, pale gold and cream-colored, dropping toward him with the casual grace of a hawk stooping on a mouse. Fire flickered between teeth longer than his forearm. Deku's body moved before his brain caught up. One for all surged through his nervous system, full cowling, 30%, and he planted his feet, raised his fists, every combat instinct screaming that this was a threat, this was danger, the dragon landed 20 feet away. The impact shook the beach. Those massive eyes, slitted and golden, fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. And then the dragon lowered its head. Not to attack. Not to breathe fire. It lowered its head and pushed its snout forward, toward him, almost, gentle. Like a dog greeting its owner. Like recognition. What the hell, Deku breathed. The dragon made a sound. Not a roar, something softer, almost a croon. It pushed closer, and Deku found himself standing absolutely still as a creature that could bite him in half pressed its snout against his chest. Right against his sternum. Right where One for All's power pooled when he concentrated it. The dragon inhaled. Deep. Satisfied. And then it just stayed there. Pressed against him. Its eyes half closed. More roars echoed from the direction of the castle. Different pitches, different timbers. Deku looked up and saw other shapes circling in the clouds, larger dragons, smaller ones, a whole flight of them calling out. Calling to this one. Calling to him. I don't understand, he said to the dragon currently using him as a scratching post. I don't know what you want. I don't know where I am. I don't, shouts from the cliff path. Human shouts. Deku turned his head and saw soldiers, actual soldiers in actual armor with actual swords, pouring down a narrow trail cut into the rock. Dozens of them. They saw him. They saw the dragon. They stopped dead. One of them, an officer, based on the slightly better armor, crossed himself and started praying. Well. This was going great. They took him to the castle. Deku didn't resist. He could have. 30% full cowling meant he could have been gone before any of them blinked, and the dragon, who he'd learned was female and named Syrax, based on the panicked shouting, had shown no interest in stopping him. But running wouldn't give him answers. Running wouldn't help him understand where he was or how to get home. So he let them bind his hands with rope. He could snap it by flexing, but they didn't need to know that, and he walked up the cliff path between a phalanx of very nervous men with very sharp swords. The castle was called Dragonstone. He learned that from the whispered conversations happening around him, conversations that the soldiers thought he couldn't hear. His enhanced senses picked up everything. Came from the sky, I saw it myself, Syrax just bowed to him, the princess will want to see this, what if he's a sorcerer? What if he's from the Shadowlands? Did you see his arms? Those scars? He's a fighter, whatever else he is. They brought him through a courtyard where more soldiers stared and servants fled and stableboys dropped what they were holding. They brought him through a great hall decorated with dragon motifs carved into every surface. They brought him to a door guarded by men in black armor with a three-headed dragon sigil on their chests. The door opened. The room beyond was well lit, warm, furnished with dark wood and crimson fabric. A fire burned in a massive hearth. Maps covered a central table. And standing beside that table, still pulling on a leather riding coat over her shoulders, was a woman. She was maybe his age, maybe a year or two older. Silver white hair pulled back in intricate braids. Violet eyes sharp enough to cut. Beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, functional, dangerous, demanding respect. She looked at him the way you'd look at a puzzle that might explode. "Leave us," she said. The soldiers hesitated. The one holding Deku's arm said, "Your Grace, he appeared from nowhere and Syrax, I know what Syrax did. I was there. Now leave us." They left. Fast. The door closed behind them. The woman circled the table, her boots clicking against the stone floor, her eyes never leaving him. She stopped 10 feet away, arms crossed. "You fell from the sky," she said. "You survived the fall. My dragon, who tolerates perhaps 3 people in this world, greeted you like a long-lost friend. You're wearing armor made of materials no smith in the 7 kingdoms has ever seen. And you've said nothing." She tilted her head. "So. Who are you?" Deku considered his options. Lying felt wrong. She'd probably catch him in it anyway, and even if she didn't, he'd have to maintain the lie indefinitely in a world he didn't understand. Better to stick to the truth and deal with the consequences. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. Most people call me Deku. I'm from, somewhere very far away. Another world, I think. I didn't mean to come here. I was fighting someone with the power to manipulate space, and I got caught in his ability, and then I was falling and then I hit your beach." He paused. "I don't know why your dragon reacted to me like that. I don't know what dragons are supposed to react to. I've never seen a dragon before today. Until about an hour ago, I wasn't sure they were real." The woman stared at him. "Another world," she repeated flatly. "Yes. And you expect me to believe this?" "I don't expect anything. I'm just telling you what happened." She studied him for a long moment. Then she walked closer, close enough that he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the slight chapping of her lips from the sea air, the calculation happening behind her eyes. "If you're lying," she said softly, "I will find out. And I will feed you to Syrax myself. I'm not lying. We'll see." She turned away, moving toward a side table where a decanter of wine sat. She poured herself a cup. Didn't offer him one. "You're on Dragonstone. The ancestral seat of House Targaryen. I am Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne of the 7 Kingdoms. She took a sip. And you, Deku of Nowhere, are my prisoner. Until I decide what to do with you. Deku nodded. Okay. She paused mid-sip. Okay. That's all you have to say. What would you like me to say? Most men in your position would bargain. Threaten. Plead. I'm not most men. And I don't have anything to bargain with. I'm not going to threaten someone who's just doing her job, and pleading doesn't seem like it would work on you. Rhaenyra set down her cup. Her expression shifted, still guarded, but something new there. Curiosity, maybe. Or confusion. You're strange, she said. I've heard that before. Are you a fighter? Those scars. Deku looked down at his arms. The bodysuit of his hero costume was torn in several places, revealing the mess of old injuries beneath. He'd earned every single one of them. Yes, he said. I fight to protect people. That's what I do. It's what I've always done. A sellsword, then. A mercenary. No. I don't fight for money. I fight because people need help, and I can help them. Rhaenyra's eyes narrowed. You fight for free? Of course. She set down the wine cup with a sharp click. Now I know you're lying. No one fights for free. Everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. Deku met her eyes. I want to go home. That's what I want. But I don't know how to get there. And until I figure it out, I'm not going to just stop being who I am. If people need help, I'll help them. That doesn't change because I'm in a different world. The silence stretched. Rhaenyra looked at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve, a lock without a visible mechanism. She opened her mouth to speak, a sound like thunder shook the castle. Then another. Then screaming. Both of them turned toward the windows. The outer wall of dragonstone was collapsing. Deku processed this in a fraction of a second as Rhaenyra yanked open the door and sprinted down the corridor. He followed. The guards hadn't locked his bindings to anything, and he snapped the rope with a flex of his forearms as he ran. The courtyard was chaos. A section of ancient wall, weakened by centuries of salt air and volcanic ground shift and nobody noticing the cracks, had given way. Massive blocks of stone were falling, bouncing, rolling. And directly in the path of the largest piece, servants. At least a dozen of them, plus children. A laundry group, maybe, or kitchen staff. They'd been crossing the courtyard when the rumbling started, and now they were frozen, looking up at death coming down. Deku didn't think. He just moved. Full cowling flared across his body, green lightning crackling over his skin, one for all flooding his muscles with power. He crossed the courtyard in a single bound, covering 80 feet in less than a second, and he got under the largest stone, a block of black rock the size of a small car, and he caught it. The impact drove him ankle-deep into the flagstones. His arms screamed. His spine compressed. The stone had to weigh 6-7 tons at least. But he held it. Move, he roared at the people behind him. Get clear. Now. They scrambled. Adults grabbed children, pulled each other, stumbled toward safety. More stones fell around them, smaller pieces, and Deku couldn't help with those. If he moved, the big one would crush him and anyone still nearby. 15 seconds. 20. His muscles burned. One for all wasn't infinite, he could feel the strain in his tendons, the limit approaching. Finally, the last person cleared the danger zone. A woman with a child in her arms, looking back at him with wide eyes. Safe. They were all safe. Deku took a breath, adjusted his grip, and threw the stone. It arced across the courtyard and crashed through a section of already ruined wall, rolling down the cliff face toward the sea. The sound of its passage echoed for long seconds. Deku stood in the crater his feet had made, breathing hard, green energy still flickering across his skin. He looked up. The entire castle had seen. Soldiers. Servants. Guards. Nobles in fine clothes who'd come to see the commotion. They lined the balconies and filled the doorways and packed the courtyard edges. Every single one of them staring at him with expressions ranging from terror to awe to religious ecstasy. And above them all, on a high balcony overlooking the yard, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen stood with her mouth slightly open and something complicated happening in her eyes. Deku waved at her. Awkwardly. He said. Sorry about your wall. I can help fix it, if you want. They didn't put him back in a cell. Instead, Rhaenyra gave him guest quarters. Small but comfortable, with a real bed and a window overlooking the sea. Guards outside the door, sure, but they were clearly there more for his protection now than to keep him contained. The castle staff had already started whispering about the Green Lightning Man, who caught a falling wall and saved a dozen people without being asked. Deku spent the rest of the day trying to learn. Servants brought him food, strange food, roasted meats and hard bread and something fermented that he politely refused, and he asked questions. Where was he? What were the Seven Kingdoms? Who were the Targaryens? What were dragons, really? The servants were hesitant at first, but Deku had always been good at putting people at ease. His genuine interest, his lack of condescension, the way he thanked them sincerely for every answer, it opened doors. By evening, he had a rough picture. This world was called Westeros. Or at least, this continent was. The Targaryens were the ruling dynasty, dragon lords who'd conquered the Seven Kingdoms 300 years ago. Rhaenyra was the named heir of King Viserys, but there was controversy. She was female, and she had half-siblings through her father's second wife who some thought had better claims. Dragons were dragons. Real, powerful, bonded to specific riders. The Targaryens were the only ones who could ride them, something in their blood. Except apparently Deku had just complicated that picture, because Syrax, Rhaenyra's personal dragon, had reacted to him in a way that dragons only reacted to Targaryens. He filed that away. Important, but not immediately actionable. What was immediately actionable was the political situation he'd landed in. Even from the fragments he'd gathered, Deku could tell this was a pressure cooker. A succession dispute, rival factions, powerful people positioning for conflict. The kind of situation that led to wars. The kind of situation where innocent people got crushed between greater powers. He hated situations like that. The door opened without a knock. Rhaenyra entered alone, still in her riding leathers, her silver hair loose now and falling past her shoulders. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. You caught a wall, she said. I did. You caught a stone that should have weighed 6 tons, held it over your head for nearly a minute, and then threw it 100 feet. Yes. How? Deku considered how to explain one for all to someone who'd never heard of quirks. In my world, some people are born with special abilities. Powers. I have one that lets me enhance my physical capabilities to extreme levels. Strength, speed, durability. It's not magic, exactly. It's just part of who I am. Rhaenyra pushed off the door and walked closer. People are born with powers. About 80% of the population where I'm from. And you. Your power. It lets you catch falling walls. Among other things. Show me. Deku stood. He held up his hand and let full cowling flicker across it, green energy crackling between his fingers, lighting up the dim room. Rhaenyra's eyes went wide. I can run faster than horses, he said. Jump higher than towers. Hit hard enough to level buildings. Take hits that would kill normal people. And... He hesitated. There's more. Other aspects of my power that I'm still learning to use. You're a weapon. I'm a person. The power doesn't define me. What I choose to do with it defines me. Rhaenyra was quiet for a moment. Then, What do you choose to do with it? Help people. Protect the innocent. Stop those who would hurt others. He let the energy fade from his hand. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And you do this for free. No payment. No reward. The reward is seeing people safe. Seeing them smile. Knowing that because I was there, someone's life is better than it would have been. Rhaenyra sat down heavily in the room's single chair. She looked tired, suddenly. The political mask she'd been wearing cracked, showing something younger and more uncertain underneath. I don't understand you, she admitted. I've dealt with schemers and flatterers and liars my entire life. I know how to spot an angle, how to find the hidden agenda. But you. She shook her head. Either you're the greatest deceiver I've ever met, or you're genuinely something I've never encountered before. Option 2, Deku said. Definitely option 2. I'm a terrible liar. Something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. My father has summoned me to bring you to King's Landing. Word has already reached the capital, ravens fly fast, and what happened in the courtyard today was notable. He wants to see you for himself. Your father. The king. Yes. Deku nodded slowly. Okay. When do we leave? Tomorrow at dawn. Rhaenyra stood. She paused at the door, looking back at him. Why did you do it? The wall. Those people. You didn't know them. You had nothing to gain. Why did you risk yourself? The question seemed to genuinely confuse her, like she couldn't process the concept. Because they were going to die, Deku said simply. And I could stop it. That's all the reason I've ever needed. Rhaenyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she left without another word. But she'd be back. Deku could tell. Sleep didn't come easily. The bed was comfortable enough, and exhaustion dragged at him. Interdimensional travel and wall catching took a lot out of a person. But his mind wouldn't stop spinning. He was stuck in another world. Maybe permanently. Everyone he loved, his mom, his friends, his classmates, they were on the other side of a dimensional gap he had no idea how to cross. He'd been working toward becoming the #1 hero. He'd been preparing to inherit All Might's legacy, to be the symbol of peace for a new generation. And now? Now he was in a medieval fantasy world with actual dragons and a succession crisis brewing. You're still you, he muttered to himself. The world changed. You didn't. Do what you've always done. Help people. Save people. Figure out the rest as you go. It wasn't much of a plan. But it was something. He finally drifted off sometime past midnight, still in his torn hero costume because he didn't have anything else to wear. And he dreamed of green lightning. King's Landing was visible from miles away, a sprawl of buildings clustered around a massive hill crowned by a red stone castle. The smell reached them even before the walls did, salt and fish and smoke and sewage, humanity packed together so tightly that the air itself seemed crowded. Deku stood at the prow of the ship, watching the city grow larger. He'd cleaned up as best he could, the castle staff at Dragonstone had found him clothes that almost fit, simple trousers and a linen shirt and a leather jerkin that strained across his shoulders. His hero costume was packed away, too damaged to wear but too valuable to abandon. Rhaenyra joined him at the railing. They'd spoken little during the 3-day voyage, but she'd taken meals with him each evening, asking careful questions and listening to his answers with that same calculating intensity. Learning him. Categorizing him. It's ugly, she said, nodding at the city. I've always thought so. The Red Keep is magnificent, but the city beneath it is a cesspool. How many people live there? 500,000, perhaps. No one keeps accurate counts of the small folk. Deku's jaw tightened. 500,000 people, and no one kept track of them. No one considered them worth counting. The smell gets worse, Rhaenyra added. Especially in Flea Bottom. The poor quarter. Try not to breathe through your nose. The harbor was chaos. Ships and boats and rafts crammed together, dockhands screaming at each other, cargo swinging on ropes overhead. Gold-cloaked guards pushed through the crowds to meet them, forming a cordon around Rhaenyra and Deku as they disembarked. People stared. Of course they did. A princess returning to the capital was news. A green-haired stranger walking beside her, scarred and foreign and strange, was bigger news. The litter waiting for Rhaenyra was ornate, carried by 8 strong men. She climbed in. Deku was given a horse. "You can ride?" Rhaenyra asked. "I'll figure it out." He did figure it out, though the horse was clearly confused by a rider who didn't need to grip with his legs because he could just not fall off through pure core strength and enhanced balance. They made their way through the city streets, and Deku absorbed everything. The rich gate first, where merchants and nobles passed in relative cleanliness. Then the street of steel, where smiths hammered and fires roared. Then the hook, curving toward the Red Keep, where the buildings grew larger and cleaner. But Deku also saw the other side. He saw children begging in alleys. He saw a woman being beaten by a man outside what might have been a brothel. He saw guards laughing as they took bribes, as they ignored crimes happening in front of them. He saw poverty and cruelty and systematic neglect everywhere he looked. His hands tightened on the reins. "You look angry," Rhaenyra said from the litter, its curtains pulled back so she could speak to him. "I am angry." "Why?" "None of this touches you." "It touches them." He nodded toward a group of street kids watching their procession with hollow eyes. "How is that acceptable? How do people see this every day and just walk past?" Rhaenyra's expression flickered. "It's always been this way." "That's not an answer. That's an excuse." She didn't respond. But she pulled the litter's curtains closed, and Deku got the sense he'd said something that landed harder than he'd intended. The Red Keep was impressive. Deku could admit that. Built into the top of Aegon's Hill, it overlooked the entire city, a fortress of pale red stone with towers and walls and enough murder holes and defensive positions to make any invader's life extremely difficult. The Great Hall alone was larger than his high school campus. And at the end of that hall, on a throne made of melted swords that looked like a torture device, sat King Viserys Targaryen. He was older than Deku expected. Thin, pale, with white hair and violet eyes that had probably been sharp once but now looked tired. His hands were bandaged, some kind of injury or illness. He smiled as Rhaenyra approached, genuine warmth softening his face. "My daughter. You honor your father with your swift return." "I would never keep you waiting, father." Rhaenyra kissed his cheek. "I've brought the man you wish to see." The king's eyes shifted to Deku. The warmth remained, but curiosity joined it. "Ah. The stranger from the sky. Step forward, young man. Let me look at you." Deku stepped forward. He was conscious of every eye in the hall on him, dozens of courtiers, guards, servants, all watching, all judging. He stopped at what felt like an appropriate distance and gave a bow that he hoped was respectful without being groveling. "Your Grace. Thank you for allowing me to come before you. The stories I've heard suggest I should be thanking you." The king leaned forward slightly, studying Deku's face. "They say you fell from the sky in a column of light. They say Syrax greeted you like a lost brother. They say you caught a falling wall and threw it aside like a child's toy. Are these stories true?" "Yes." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The king raised a hand, and silence fell. "Are you a sorcerer?" "No. Where I come from, some people are born with abilities beyond the normal. I'm one of those people. It's not sorcery, it's just part of who I am." "And where do you come from?" "Another world. I was pulled here by accident. I'm still trying to find a way home." More murmurs. The king seemed fascinated rather than skeptical. "Another world. Dragons in your world?" No. Until I met Syrax, I thought they were myths. And yet she greeted you. That is, remarkable. The king gestured to an older man standing beside the throne, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, radiating barely concealed hostility. My hand, Lord Otto Hightower. He has expressed concerns about your presence. Perhaps you could address them. The hand stepped forward. His voice was smooth, controlled. Your grace honors me. My concerns are simple. This man appears from nowhere, with powers no one can explain, and immediately ingratiates himself with dragons and princesses alike. Forgive my caution, but such a coincidence strains credulity. I didn't ingratiate myself with anyone, Deku said. I fell out of the sky and got taken prisoner. The dragon came to me on her own. And I caught the wall because people were going to die. There's no scheme. I'm just trying to survive and figure out how to get home. So you claim. Otto's smile didn't reach his eyes. But claims are cheap. Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing. The king perked up. A demonstration. Yes, I should like to see what the stories describe. Would you be willing, young man? Deku glanced at Rhaenyra. She gave him a small nod. Sure, he said. What would you like to see? The courtyard of the Red Keep was cleared. Nobles crowded onto balconies and lined the walls. The king watched from a raised platform, Rhaenyra at his side. Otto Hightower stood nearby, along with a woman Deku hadn't met yet, brown-haired, beautiful in a tired way, her hands folded in front of her and her expression carefully neutral. My wife, the king said, noticing Deku's glance. Queen Alicent. Deku bowed to her. Your Grace. She inclined her head slightly. Her eyes assessed him with an intelligence that reminded him of Rhaenyra, but colder. More guarded. Now then, the king said eagerly. Show us what you can do. Deku rolled his shoulders. He'd given similar demonstrations before, controlled displays of power to prove his capabilities. The key was impressive without destructive. He started with speed. One moment he was standing in the center of the courtyard, the next, he was at the far wall, 60 feet away, covered in a blur of green lightning. The crowd gasped. Before they could recover, he was back in the center, then at the opposite wall, then balanced on top of a decorative statue, then back in the center again. 5 positions in less than 2 seconds. Then strength. He walked to a section of the courtyard where practice equipment was set up, training dummies, weapons racks, that sort of thing. He gripped a stone column that supported an overhang, structural, thick, anchored deep, and pulled. The stone groaned. Cracks appeared. With a grunt of effort, he ripped the column free of the ground, lifted it over his head, and held it there. This is about 2 tons, he said casually. I can do more, but I don't want to damage your castle. He set the column down gently, then turned to face the crowd. One more thing. He raised his fist, aimed at the sky, and threw a punch. Delaware smash, 1%. Just enough to generate a shockwave that blew straight up, parting the clouds briefly, letting a shaft of sunlight through before they closed again. The silence in the courtyard was absolute. Then the king started laughing. Genuine, delighted laughter, like a child seeing a magic trick. Magnificent. Oh, this is magnificent. He clapped his bandaged hands together, wincing slightly at the pain but too excited to care. You're wasted as a wanderer, young man. You should be a knight. Champion of the realm. With you at our side, who could stand against us? I'm not looking for a position, Deku said. I'm just trying to find my way home. And until you do, will you stay with us? I would have you as my guest, under my protection. Deku considered. He needed a base of operations. He needed access to whatever knowledge this world had about dimensional travel, magic, ancient texts, anything. And he needed to understand the political situation better, because he could feel the tension in this court like a physical weight. "I'd be honored," he said. The king beamed. Rhaenyra smiled. Otto's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. "And Queen Alicent?" Queen Alicent was looking at him with something he couldn't quite read. Not hostility. Not welcome. Something complicated, layered, carefully concealed. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away first. They gave him rooms in the guest keep, comfortable but isolated, close enough to the royal apartments for honor but far enough for security. Deku suspected both factors had been carefully calculated. He spent the next few days learning the layout of the Red Keep, meeting people, gathering information. The servants were his best sources, they saw everything and were largely invisible to the nobles, which meant no one monitored what they said to the strange foreign guest. The political situation was worse than he'd realized. Rhaenyra was the named heir, but more than half the court believed Prince Aegon, the king's eldest son by Queen Alicent, should inherit instead. The arguments were predictable: tradition, gender, the stability of a male ruler. Behind those arguments were factions, alliances, families positioning themselves for the inevitable power struggle. The Hightowers, led by Otto, backed Aegon. They'd been building their network for years, placing allies in key positions, cultivating lords who could be bought or pressured. They were convinced that Rhaenyra's accession would mean their destruction, so they were planning to make sure it never happened. The Blacks, Rhaenyra's supporters, were more loosely organized, relying on her status as named heir and her father's favor. They had the legal position but weaker groundwork. And the king was dying. Everyone knew it. He'd been sick for years, cuts that wouldn't heal, infections that kept returning. He had months left, maybe a year. When he died, everything would come apart. Deku could see the war coming. Two sides, irreconcilable differences, weapons stockpiled, alliances locked in. When Viserys died, the dance of the dragons would begin. That was what the servants whispered it might be called. A civil war between dragon riders. Hundreds of thousands dead. The Targaryen dynasty potentially ended. All because two factions couldn't figure out how to share power. It was exactly the kind of situation he hated. Exactly the kind of situation he had to do something about. The fourth night, Rhaenyra came to his rooms. It was late, past midnight. She slipped in through the servants' entrance, wrapped in a plain cloak, her silver hair hidden under a hood. She looked tired, stressed, and when she sat down in his chair without asking permission, Deku didn't comment. "My husband returns from the Stepstones tomorrow," she said. Deku had learned about Daemon Targaryen. The prince. The rogue. The man who'd married his niece in a ceremony of questionable legitimacy, who rode the dragon Caraxes, who'd been fighting pirates in the Stepstones for glory and gold. The most dangerous man in Westeros, by many accounts. "I heard. He'll hate you." Rhaenyra's voice was flat. "You threaten everything he values. The dragons respond to you. The court is fascinated by you." She stopped. "You what?" She stood abruptly, walking to the window, her back to him. "When you caught the wall. When you saved those people. I watched from the balcony, and I felt something I haven't felt in years. Hope. Actual hope. That maybe there was another way. That maybe the future isn't just scheming and betrayal and waiting for the knife." She turned to face him. "What are you, Izuku Midoriya? What are you really?" "I told you. I'm a hero. Where I come from, that's my job, to save people, to protect the innocent, to stand against those who would hurt others. A hero." She tasted the word. "We have knights in Westeros. They're supposed to be heroes. They swear vows to protect the weak and uphold justice." Her laugh was bitter. "They're all liars. Every single one. They protect whoever pays them and uphold whatever serves their lords. Then they're not heroes. They're employees. What's the difference?" A hero doesn't do it for money or status or orders. A hero does it because it's right. Because someone needs help, and they can provide it. Because the world should be better than it is, and they're going to make it better, one person at a time. Rhaenyra stared at him. That's insane. Probably. You can't save everyone. No. But that doesn't mean I should stop trying. She walked closer. Close enough that he could smell the wine on her breath, see the wetness in her eyes. I'm going to be queen, she said softly. That's what my father decided. That's what I've spent my whole life preparing for. And when it happens, half the realm is going to try to kill me. They're going to call my children bastards. They're going to say I'm unfit to rule. They're going to ally with the Hightowers and crown my half-brother and start a war that will destroy everything. Is there another option? There's supposed to be. Find allies. Build coalitions. Eliminate threats before they can strike. She laughed again, hollow. My uncle taught me that. Demon. He's very good at eliminating threats. What if you didn't have to eliminate threats? What if you could turn them into allies? That's naive. Maybe. Deku met her eyes. But I've seen it work. I've seen enemies become friends. I've seen hatred turn into understanding. It's harder than fighting, and it takes longer, and sometimes it fails. But when it works. He shrugged. When it works, you don't just win. You build something that lasts. Rhaenyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, stay here. At the Red Keep. At least until you find your way home. I was planning to. And when Daemon arrives, be careful. He's not evil, but he's dangerous. He'll see you as a threat, and he responds to threats with violence. I'm not easy to threaten. She smiled slightly. The first real smile he'd seen from her. No. I'm beginning to realize that. She left the way she came. But when she was gone, Deku could still smell her, wine and salt air and something floral. He sat by the window for a long time, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness, thinking about war and peace and the space between them. Daemon Targaryen arrived with fire and fury. His dragon, Caraxes, was impossible to miss, blood-red scales, elongated neck, scars crossing its body from dozens of battles. The dragon circled the Red Keep twice before landing in the main courtyard, roaring loud enough to shake windows throughout the castle. Deku was on a balcony when it happened, watching. The dragon was impressive, larger than Syrax, more aggressive in its movements. The rider was tall, silver-haired like all Targaryens, with a sharp-featured face and eyes that seemed to radiate confidence bordering on arrogance. Daemon dismounted with theatrical flair. He pulled off his riding gloves, handed them to a servant, and strode toward the castle without waiting for an escort. His armor was elaborate, black with red accents, and a sword hung at his hip, Valyrian steel, if the servant gossip was accurate. Dark Sister, it was called. His eyes swept the balconies as he walked, noting positions, assessing threats. When they landed on Deku, they stopped. Even from 50 feet away, Deku could feel the hostility. The challenge. He didn't look away. Daemon smiled, thin, sharp, predatory, and entered the castle. The confrontation happened that evening. Deku was in the training yard, practicing forms, keeping his body sharp, working through combinations of strikes and dodges. He'd found that physical activity helped him think, and he had a lot of thinking to do. The sound of boots on stone announced Daemon's arrival. The prince approached with 3 retainers, all of them radiating menace. The training yard cleared as servants and guardsmen suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. The Green Wonder, Daemon said, stopping 10 feet away. His voice was smooth, cultured, with an edge beneath the silk. My wife has told me about you. My daughter's dragon has told me more. He tilted his head. Syrax hasn't stopped calling since you left Dragonstone. She wants you back. Dragons are mysterious, Deku said, lowering his hands but not his guard. I don't know why she reacted to me the way she did. Neither do I. And that troubles me. Demon's hand drifted to his sword hilt. You appear from nowhere. You perform impossible feats. You charm my wife and fascinate my king. And the dragons, the very symbol of Targaryen power, bow to you. I'm not trying to take anything from you. Aren't you? Demon's smile widened. Everything you do takes something from me. My uniqueness. My position. My wife's attention. You're a thief, stranger. You just don't realize what you're stealing. I think you should step back and reconsider this conversation. I think you should draw a sword and face me like a man. I don't use swords. Demon's eyes gleamed. No. Then how do you propose to defend yourself? He drew Dark Sister in a single fluid motion, Valyrian steel singing as it cleared the scabbard, and lunged. Deku had fought faster opponents. He'd trained against professionals who could close distances in heartbeats. Demon was good, exceptional, even, but he wasn't superhuman. The blade came at Deku's throat. Deku raised his hand, let one for all flicker to 15%, and caught the sword between two fingers. The impact jarred through his arm. The edge bit into his reinforced skin, drawing a thin line of blood, but went no further. He held it there, Valyrian steel, the sharpest metal in the world, pinched between his index and middle finger like a toy. Demon's eyes went wide. I'm not your enemy, Deku said quietly. I don't want your throne. I don't want your wife. I don't want your dragons or your power or anything that belongs to you. I just want to help people and find my way home. He released the sword. Demon stumbled back, staring at his blade, at the blood on its edge, at the man who'd just done something impossible. What are you? I've answered that question a lot lately. Deku flexed his fingers. The cut was already closing. I'm someone who's been fighting all his life. Not for glory or wealth or power, for people. To save them. To protect them. That's all I know how to do. Demon's retainers had their hands on their weapons, but none of them had drawn. They'd seen what happened. They knew how outmatched they were. If I decided to kill you, Demon said softly, what would you do? I'd stop you. Without killing you. You're that confident. I'm that capable. But I'd rather not prove it. I think you love Rhaenyra, in your own way. I think you love this kingdom. I think you could be an ally instead of an enemy, if you could get past seeing me as a threat. Deku met his eyes. I'm not here to take your place, Prince Demon. I'm here because the universe threw me here, and while I'm here, I'm going to do what I always do, help people. That's not a threat to you unless you make it one. The silence stretched. Demon's expression shifted through several emotions, rage, calculation, grudging respect, before settling on something unreadable. He sheathed Dark Sister. We're not finished, he said. This conversation. This situation. We're not finished. I didn't think we were. Demon turned and walked away. His retainers followed, shooting glances back at Deku. When they were gone, Deku let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That could have gone worse. It could have gone better, too, but it could definitely have gone worse. Now he just had to figure out how to make it go better. The incident in the training yard spread through the castle like wildfire. By breakfast the next morning, everyone knew that the green stranger had caught Prince Demon's Valyrian steel sword between his fingers. The story grew in the telling. Some versions had Deku breaking the sword, others had him fighting off all four men simultaneously, a few wild versions had dragons involved. Deku ignored the rumors and focused on what mattered. He found Queen Alicent in the gardens. She was sitting alone on a stone bench, watching her children play in the distance. Prince Aegon, about 13, swaggering around with a practice sword, Prince Aemond, 11, reading a book in the shade, Princess Helaena, 9 or 10, crouched by a flower bed talking to the insects. The queen's guard stiffened when Deku approached, but she waved them back. "The man who caught a sword," she said, not looking at him. "Everyone's talking about it. They exaggerate." "Do they?" Now she looked at him. Her eyes were green, striking, cold. "My father thinks you're dangerous. He's rarely wrong about such things." "Your father is Otto Hightower." "Yes. The Hand of the King. The man who's spent years building a faction to put your son on the throne instead of Rhaenyra." Alicent's expression didn't change. "You've been listening to gossip." "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." She stood, smoothing her skirts. "What do you want, stranger? Why approach me?" "Because you're smart. Because you're powerful. And because you look like someone who's been fighting a battle alone for a long time." Something flickered in her eyes. "You don't know anything about me. I know you married a man twice your age when you were 15. I know you've given him 4 children. I know your father uses you as a piece in his political games and your stepchildren hate you for things that aren't your fault. I know you're terrified that when Viserys dies, Rhaenyra will have your children killed to secure her claim." Alicent's mask cracked. For just a moment, he saw the exhausted, frightened woman beneath the queen. "How?" "Because I've seen that look before. On people who've been carrying too much for too long. On people who feel like they can't trust anyone." Deku kept his voice gentle. "I'm not your enemy, Your Grace. I'm not anyone's enemy. But I am offering to help, if you want it." "Help with what?" "Whatever you need. Protection for your children. Someone to talk to who isn't using you. A friend." He shrugged. "I'm not asking for anything in return. That's not how friendship works." Alicent stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a single, disbelieving sound. "You're either the most cunning man I've ever met, or the most foolish. I've been called both. My father warned me about men like you. Men who seem too good to be true. Your father is probably right to be cautious. But sometimes, people really are what they appear to be. Sometimes the good thing is actually good." She turned away, looking out at her children. Aegon was now chasing Aemond with the practice sword. Helaena remained absorbed in her flowers, oblivious. "My daughter," Alicent said quietly. "Helaena. She's different. She says strange things. She sees things that haven't happened. People think she's simple-minded. What do you think?" "I think she sees too much. And no one listens." Deku watched the little princess carefully pick up a butterfly and let it climb onto her finger. "Some people where I come from have abilities like that. Seeing the future, or pieces of it. It's a gift, not a flaw." Alicent turned back to him. Her expression was still guarded, but something had shifted. "If you hurt my children," she said, "I will find a way to destroy you. No matter how strong you are. I believe you." He meant it. "And if anyone tries to hurt your children, I'll stop them. No matter how powerful they are." They looked at each other. Two people taking the measure of each other, searching for lies, finding none. "We'll see," Alicent said finally. "We'll see what kind of man you really are." She walked away, toward her children. Deku watched her go, thinking about bridges and how long they took to build. That night, a storm rolled in from the bay. Lightning crackled across the sky, illuminating the Red Keep in harsh white flashes. Thunder rattled the windows. Rain hammered the stones hard enough to drown out all other sound. Deku was in his chambers, reading by candlelight, a history of the Targaryen conquest, borrowed from the royal library, when someone knocked at his door. He opened it to find a girl standing in the corridor. Soaking wet, barefoot, her nightgown plastered to her small frame. Silver hair stringy with rain. Violet eyes wide and terrified. Princess Helaena. Help, she whispered. Please. You have to help. Deku crouched to her level. What's wrong? Are you hurt? She shook her head frantically. Not me. You. Everyone. It's coming. The green lightning man, the one who breaks the wheel and wakes the shadow, it's coming. Her hands gripped his shirt with surprising strength. I saw it. I've seen it for years. You fell from the sky and the dragons sang in behind you, her voice broke. Something in the ice. Something hungry. It was sleeping for so long but now it's not and it heard you and it's waking up. Deku felt cold that had nothing to do with the storm. Helaena. Slow down. What did you see? The dark that thinks. Her eyes were unfocused, staring through him at something only she could perceive. It's been sleeping since the long night. Since the first men drove it back. But your power, the green lightning, it's like a beacon. It heard you arrive. It's stretching. Testing. Learning. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain. We have years, not decades. It's coming south. And if we're not ready. She shuddered. I see dragons falling from the sky. I see the wall cracking. I see snow in King's Landing and the dead walking and everyone, she collapsed against him, sobbing. Deku held her. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know what this meant or if she was right. But he believed her. Every instinct he had screamed that this girl was telling the truth, a truth no one else had listened to, a burden no child should carry. Okay, he said softly, stroking her wet hair. Okay. I hear you. I believe you. She looked up at him. You do? Yes. And if something's coming, something that dangerous, we're going to stop it. Together. How? I don't know yet. But I've never let that stop me before. He smiled at her, the warm, reassuring smile he'd learned from All Might. I'm going to protect you, Helaena. You and your family and this whole kingdom. That's what I do. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, some of the terror faded from her eyes. The green lightning man, she whispered. The wheel breaker. I've been dreaming about you since I was little. I never knew what it meant. Maybe it means you were supposed to meet me. So you could warn me. Maybe. She blinked, suddenly looking very young and very tired. I'm cold. Deku wrapped her in a blanket from his bed and carried her to the door. Let's get you back to your rooms. And tomorrow, you're going to tell me everything you've seen. Every vision, every dream. We're going to figure this out. Promise? Promise. He carried her through the storm-lashed corridors of the Red Keep, past startled guards and confused servants, until he found her chambers. Her handmaid nearly fainted at the sight of the princess in a stranger's arms, but Deku handed her over gently and left before anyone could ask questions. Back in his own rooms, he stood at the window, watching lightning split the sky. Something was coming. Something worse than a civil war. Something that dwarfed the petty politics of kings and queens. He'd come to this world by accident. But maybe, just maybe, that accident had a purpose. The ship rocked gently in the harbor, preparations complete, ready to sail at dawn. Deku stood at the prow, looking out at King's Landing's sleeping lights. Behind him, the crew performed final checks. In a few hours, they'd depart for, somewhere. He wasn't sure where yet. The future was a maze of possibilities and dangers. Footsteps on the deck. He didn't turn. Rhaenyra came to stand beside him. She'd shed her court finery for practical traveling clothes, leather and wool, her hair braided back. You're not sleeping, she said. Neither are you. I don't sleep well. Too many things to worry about. Yeah. He watched the moonlight on the water. I spoke to your sister. Half-sister. Helaena. Rhaenyra stiffened slightly. She's difficult to understand. She's a prophet. Or something like it. She sees the future. She says strange things. She sees strange things. There's a difference. Deku turned to face her. Something bad is coming, Rhaenyra. Worse than your succession dispute. Worse than anything this kingdom has faced in thousands of years. Helaena sees it. She's been seeing it for years. And if she's right. If she's right, what? Then we need to be ready. All of us. Together. Rhaenyra was quiet for a moment. Then, you really believe her? Yes. Why? Everyone else thinks she's mad. Because I've seen powers like hers before. Because I can tell the difference between madness and truth. Because when she looked at me and described what she saw, I felt it. In my gut. In my bones. She's not making it up. Rhaenyra looked out at the water. My father's dying. My stepmother plots against me. My uncle is a barely contained storm. Half the realm questions my right to rule. And now you're telling me there's a supernatural threat beyond the wall that will destroy everything. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what the worst part is? I'm glad you told me. Because it means I'm not crazy for feeling like the world is about to end. It doesn't have to end. Deku put his hand on the railing, close to hers but not touching. I've faced impossible situations before. Enemies that seemed unstoppable. Odds that seemed unbeatable. I'm still here. And you think you can save us? I think I can help. But I can't do it alone. No one can. He turned to her fully. The war you're worried about, the dance of the dragons, the succession crisis, it doesn't have to happen. If both sides could find common ground, if Alicent and you could stop seeing each other as enemies. That's naive. Maybe. But naive is just another word for believing things can change. He met her eyes. I'm not asking you to trust Alicent. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that she's not your enemy. That you're both trapped in the same system, fighting each other when you should be fighting the system itself. Rhaenyra stared at him. You've met with her. Alicent. Yes. Why? Because she's scared for her children. Just like you'll be scared for yours. And frightened people do desperate things unless someone gives them a reason not to. And you think you can be that reason? I think I can try. The silence stretched. The ship creaked. Somewhere in the city, a dog barked. You're unlike anyone I've ever met, Rhaenyra said finally. You make me feel like things might actually work out. No one's ever made me feel that before. Things will work out. If we work together. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool, strong, her grip firm. Then let's work together, she said. Whatever comes. Whatever happens. We face it together. Deku squeezed her hand. Together. They stood there as the moon set and the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky. A new day. A new beginning. And somewhere in the far north, something ancient stirred in the darkness, turning its attention south. The game had changed. And Izuku Midoriya, Deku, was ready to play. Chapter 2, The Court of Thorns. The streets of King's Landing hit Deku like a punch to the senses. He'd seen poverty before. Japan had its struggles, its forgotten corners, its people who slipped through society's cracks. But this was different. This was systemic, intentional, centuries of neglect baked into the very stones of the city. The royal procession moved through the main thoroughfare, Rhaenyra in her ornate litter, Deku on horseback beside her, 50 gold cloaks clearing the path ahead. Commoners pressed against the edges, watching with hungry eyes. Some cheered for the princess. Most just stared. Deku couldn't stop looking. A child, maybe 6 years old, digging through a pile of refuse for scraps. An old woman slumped against a wall, flies buzzing around an untreated wound on her leg. 2 men fighting over a crust of bread while a crowd watched and laughed. A girl his age, hollow-eyed, being shoved into a doorway by a man 3 times her size. His hands tightened on the reins. "Don't," Rhaenyra said quietly from the litter. She'd pulled back the curtain to speak with him. "Whatever you're thinking, don't. You can't save them all. You'll start a riot if you try. That girl is one of thousands. Tens of thousands. This is Flea Bottom. This is how it's always been. That doesn't make it right. No. But it makes it reality." Deku forced himself to look forward. His jaw ached from clenching. The procession wound uphill, leaving the worst of the slums behind. The buildings grew larger, cleaner. The people grew better fed, better dressed. By the time they reached the gates of the Red Keep, they might as well have been in a different city. The guards saluted as they passed through. Servants rushed to attend the princess. Deku dismounted and handed his horse to a stable boy who looked at him with undisguised awe. "The Green Lightning Man," the boy whispered. "It's really you." Deku blinked. "Word travels fast. Everyone's talking about you, sire. How you caught the wall. How you stopped Prince Demon's sword. How you, Tom Min." A senior servant cuffed the boy's ear. "Mind your duties, not your gossip." The boy scurried away with the horse. Deku watched him go, thinking about how quickly stories spread. How quickly reputations formed. That could be useful. Or dangerous. Probably both. The throne room was packed. King Viserys sat on the Iron Throne, looking worse than he had a week ago. His skin had taken on a grayish cast. His breathing was audible from 20 feet away. But his eyes were sharp as they tracked the proceedings, a dispute between 2 minor lords over fishing rights that somehow required royal arbitration. Deku stood near the back, observing. He'd learned that court sessions like this were less about the stated business and more about the unstated, who stood with whom, who wore what colors, who whispered to whom during the boring parts. The real politics happened in the margins. Rhaenyra sat near the throne, in the position of heir. Her half-brother Aegon slouched nearby, visibly bored, picking at his nails with a small knife. Prince Aemon stood straighter, more attentive, his one good eye fixed on the proceedings with unsettling intensity. He'd lost the other to Rhaenyra's son in some childhood accident, and he clearly hadn't forgotten. Queen Alicent sat on the king's other side. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was serene. And every few minutes, her eyes would flick to Deku, assess him, then return to the front. Otto Hightower stood at the base of the throne, managing the session. His voice was smooth, his control absolute. He directed petitioners, summarized issues, suggested rulings. The king approved most of his suggestions with barely a glance. This was how power actually worked here. Not the king on his throne, but the hand at his ear. The fishing dispute concluded. The lords bowed and retreated. Otto consulted a scroll. "Your Grace, the next matter concerns the Goldcloak's budget for the coming, wait." Viserys raised a trembling hand. "I would hear from our guest." "Ser Deku." Every head in the room turned. Deku stepped forward, conscious of the weight of attention. He stopped at what he hoped was an appropriate distance and gave a bow. "Your Grace. You've been with us a fortnight now. I trust you find our hospitality adequate." "More than adequate, Your Grace." "Thank you." Good, good." Viserys smiled weakly. "I confess I've been curious. You've seen much of my city by now. What do you think of King's Landing?" The room went quiet. This was clearly some kind of test, but of what? Deku considered his words carefully. Lying was wrong. But blunt honesty might cause more harm than good. What would All Might do? All Might would tell the truth. But he'd tell it with a smile. It's impressive, Your Grace. The architecture, the history, the scale of it. Nothing like this exists where I come from. He paused. But I've also seen things that troubled me. Oh. Viserys leaned forward slightly. Such as? The poverty in the lower districts. The lack of clean water in several areas. The number of sick and injured people with no access to care. He kept his voice calm, factual. These aren't criticisms of Your Grace. I understand that ruling a city of 500,000 is extraordinarily difficult. But since you asked what I think. He spread his hands. I think there's work to be done. The silence in the room was absolute. Otto's expression had gone tight. Several lords exchanged glances. Alicent's face was unreadable. Rhaenyra looked like she couldn't decide whether to be amused or horrified. Viserys stared at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Ha! A man who speaks plainly in a court of flatterers. How refreshing. He waved a hand. You're right, of course. The lower city is a disgrace. My grandfather tried to address it. My father tried. I've tried. The problems persist. He sighed. If you have solutions, Ser Deku, I would hear them. I might. But I'd need to spend time in those districts first. See the problems up close. Talk to the people who live with them. Otto stepped forward smoothly. Your Grace, if I may. It would be unusual for a foreign guest to involve himself so directly in the city's affairs. The small folk might misunderstand his intentions. The small folk, Deku said, might appreciate someone caring enough to ask. Otto's smile didn't reach his eyes. A noble sentiment. But sentiment rarely solves problems. Neither does ignoring them. The tension in the room ratcheted up. Lords shifted uncomfortably. Guards gripped their weapons a little tighter. Viserys raised his hand again. Enough. Lord Otto raises valid concerns. But Ser Deku raises valid points. Let us compromise. He looked at Deku. You may visit the lower city. Observe. Report back to me what you find. But take an escort, for your protection, not theirs. And. He glanced at Rhaenyra. My daughter will accompany you. She should see these things too. Rhaenyra's eyes widened slightly. Father, you'll be queen someday, Rhaenyra. Best you know what that means. Rhaenyra closed her mouth. Nodded once. Otto's expression flickered, annoyance quickly suppressed. A wise decision, Your Grace. Of course it is. I made it. Viserys settled back in his throne, exhausted by the brief exchange. Now. The Gold Cloak's budget. Court continued. But something had shifted. Deku could feel it in the way people looked at him now, not just curiosity, but calculation. He'd made himself a factor in the game. He hoped he knew what he was doing. Flea Bottom looked different without the royal procession. Deku moved through the narrow streets with Rhaenyra at his side, both of them dressed in plain clothes, rough wool and leather, nothing that screamed wealth or status. A dozen guards followed at a distance, disguised as laborers and merchants, hands never far from hidden weapons. This is insane, Rhaenyra muttered as they sidestepped a stream of what was definitely sewage running down the center of the street. Princesses don't wander through Flea Bottom. Queens should know their people. Queens have servants for that. Do your servants tell you the truth? Or do they tell you what you want to hear? She didn't answer. Which was answer enough. They turned a corner into a small square, if you could call it that. A handful of buildings surrounded a common area where a well sat dry and useless. Women gathered around a different water source, a barrel being filled by a boy who carried buckets from somewhere deeper in the district. That water, Deku said. Where does it come from? Rhaenyra asked one of the women. The answer made her face go pale. The Blackwater. They're drinking from the Blackwater. Deku had been here 2 weeks and he already knew the Blackwater rush was where the city dumped its waste. Anyone drinking that water was basically poisoning themselves slowly. There's a well right there, he said. It went dry 3 years ago, the woman said, eyeing them suspiciously. Crown promised to fix it. Never did. Deku walked to the well. Looked down. It wasn't dry, it was blocked. He could see water glinting maybe 30 feet down, behind a mass of debris that had accumulated and never been cleared. I need a rope, he said. What are you? Rhaenyra started. He jumped into the well. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Deku braced his feet against one wall and his back against the other, descending slowly in controlled increments. The light faded. The smell intensified, rotting garbage, dead things, years of neglect. He reached the obstruction. A tangle of old wood, broken pottery, what might have been animal carcasses, all packed together and sealed with dried mud. It would take workers with equipment days to clear this. Deku punched it. One for all at 20% drove his fist through the obstruction like it was paper. Water burst upward, cold and surprisingly clean. The blockage had actually been acting as a filter of sorts, keeping the good water below and the contaminated mess above. He punched again. And again. Chunks of debris flew past him, and the water level rose rapidly. He started climbing, moving faster than the water could rise, emerging from the well just as the first clean flow spilled over the rim. The women around the square stared. The water barrel boy dropped his buckets. Deku was covered in filth, soaked to the bone, and grinning. Water should be good now, he said. Might want to let it run for a few minutes to clear the mud. Rhaenyra's expression was unreadable. You just jumped into a well. The well was blocked. Now it's not. You could have ordered someone to do that. Would have taken days. Those people are drinking from the Blackwater right now. Today. Every hour matters. The women had gathered around the well, watching clean water flow for the first time in years. One of them, older, face weathered by hard living, approached Deku cautiously. Who are you, sir? Nobody important. Just someone who saw a problem and could fix it. That's not nothing. She reached out and gripped his forearm, squeezing hard. The crown forgot us years ago. Nobody comes down here, except to collect taxes and bodies. You're different. I'm trying to be. Word spread fast. By the time Deku and Rhaenyra moved on to the next street, people were following. Not threatening, curious. Hopeful in a way that seemed foreign to them. This is how you do it, Deku said quietly to Rhaenyra as they walked. Not with armies or dragons or threats. You show people you see them. That they matter. And then what? I can't fix every well in Flea Bottom personally. No. But you can create systems that do. You can appoint people whose job it is to maintain infrastructure. You can allocate budget. You can make it someone's responsibility. He shrugged. The hard part isn't resources, it's caring enough to try. Rhaenyra was quiet for a long moment. Then, you'd make a terrible hand of the king. Yeah. Yes. You actually want to help people. That's not how politics works. Maybe politics should change. She looked at him, really looked, with those sharp violet eyes that missed nothing. You actually believe that? You actually think you can change how the world works? I've seen it done. Not here, but where I come from. Things can get better. People can get better. It just takes someone willing to start. They rounded another corner. A building was sagging dangerously, one wall buckled outward, timber cracked and groaning. A crowd had gathered at a safe distance, watching helplessly. "It's gonna fall," someone shouted. "Get back. Everyone get," the wall gave way. Deku moved. Full cowling blazed across his body, green lightning crackling, and he crossed 60 feet in a heartbeat. The falling wall, thousands of pounds of stone and timber, slammed down on his raised arms. His feet drove into the cobblestones. His spine compressed. His muscles screamed. He held it. "Get them out," he roared, and people scrambled, guards rushing forward, civilians helping each other, a dozen people who'd been trapped in the collapsing building's shadow dragged to safety. 30 seconds. 45. A minute of holding up a wall that should have crushed him. Finally, the last person cleared the danger zone. Deku adjusted his grip, found a section that was still mostly intact, and shoved the debris sideways. It crashed into the street in a controlled avalanche, raising a cloud of dust and noise. When the dust cleared, Deku stood in a crater of broken cobblestones, breathing hard but uninjured. The crowd had gone silent. Then someone cheered. Then everyone was cheering, a roar of sound that echoed off the cramped buildings, a release of fear and gratitude and something that might have been hope. The green. The green. The green. The chant spread. People pressed forward, not to threaten but to touch, to thank, to see the impossible man up close. Guards had to form a protective ring around Deku and Rhaenyra just to keep them from being overwhelmed by enthusiasm. "This is unprecedented," Rhaenyra murmured. "They're chanting your name. They're chanting because someone helped them. They don't care about my name, they care that I showed up." That's the same thing, in their minds. She was looking at him with that calculating expression again. "Do you understand what you've just done? You've built a power base in Flea Bottom. The small folk love you. If it came to a fight, they'd follow you over any lord in the city. I'm not building a power base. I'm just helping people. I know. That's what makes it so effective." She grabbed his arm, pulling him through the crowd toward their hidden escort. "We need to get back to the keep. My father needs to know about this. And Otto definitely needs to not know until we control the narrative." They pushed through the crowd, the chanting following them all the way to the edge of the district. The green. The green. The green. Deku had a feeling that name was going to stick. The Red Keep was in an uproar when they returned. Servants rushed past, lords gathered in clumps of urgent whispered conversation, and guards were posted at twice the normal density throughout the main corridors. "What happened?" Rhaenyra demanded, grabbing a passing attendant. "Princess. Prince Daeron, there's been an accident." Rhaenyra's face went pale. Whatever her political conflicts with Alicent and the Green faction, Daeron was just a child. "Where?" "The training yard, Princess. The queen is all ready." Rhaenyra was running before the servant finished. Deku followed. They burst into the training yard to find chaos. A horse lay dead, its neck twisted at a wrong angle. Hay bales and practice equipment were scattered everywhere, evidence of some kind of panic. Guards formed a perimeter around a cluster of people near the far wall. And at the center of that cluster, lying motionless on the ground, was a small boy with silver hair. Alicent was kneeling beside him, her composure shattered. She was speaking rapidly, prayers or pleas or just noise, Deku couldn't tell. A maester crouched nearby, his chains clinking as he examined the boy's head with trembling hands. "What happened?" Deku pushed through the guards, ignoring their protests. "Tell me exactly what happened." "Who?" "The horse threw him," someone babbled. "He's been riding for years but the horse spooked, we don't know why, and his foot caught in the stirrup and he was dragged." Deku dropped to his knees beside the boy, Daeron, the youngest of Alicent's children, maybe 10 years old. He was unconscious, breathing shallowly. His skin was scraped raw in several places. But the real concern was his head, there was blood matting his silver hair, and the maester's hands kept hesitating, uncertain. Move, Deku said. The maester looked up. I beg your pardon, move. Now. Something in his voice made the man scramble backward. Deku placed his hands on either side of Daeron's head, gently, carefully. He let one for all pulse through him, not for strength, but for awareness. The power had aspects he was still learning, gifts from previous holders. One of them gave him heightened perception, the ability to sense damage at levels normal senses couldn't reach. He felt the injury. A skull fracture, small but present. Pressure building underneath, bleeding in the brain. Without intervention, the boy would be dead within hours. He needs surgery, Deku said. There's pressure on his brain from internal bleeding. You need to, we don't have the knowledge, the maester said, pale and shaking. Such injuries, we can make him comfortable, but, you can cut a hole in his skull. Relieve the pressure. I've seen it done. Deku looked at Alicent. It's risky but it's his only chance. Do you understand? Without intervention, he dies. Alicent's eyes were wild. Do it. Whatever you need to do, I'm not a surgeon. I don't have the training. But I can guide your maester, tell him where to cut, what to look for. He turned to the trembling medical man. What's your name? Melas. Grand Maester Melas. Melas. I need you to trust me. I know how this sounds, I'm a stranger, I have no chain, I have no credentials. But I can sense things normal people can't. I can tell you exactly where the bleeding is and exactly how to fix it. Are you willing to try, or are you willing to let a child die? The Grand Maester looked at Alicent. At the dying boy. At Deku. I'll try, he whispered. Good. Deku looked around. We need a clean room. Boiled water. Clean linens. The sharpest, smallest knife you have. And we need to move now. The surgery took 3 hours. Deku guided the Grand Maester through every step, his enhanced perception mapping the inside of Daeron's skull like a three-dimensional image. Here. Cut here. Smaller. The pressure is releasing. You need to clear the blood before it clots again. It was delicate work that should have been done by a team of specialists with modern equipment. Instead it was one terrified maester with medieval tools, guided by a man from another world using powers no one here understood. But it worked. When Melas finally stepped back, hands shaking, face drenched in sweat, Daeron was still breathing. His color was improving. The pressure in his skull had been relieved, the bleeding stopped. He wasn't out of danger, infection, complications, a dozen other risks, but he was alive when he shouldn't have been. Alicent hadn't left the room. She'd stood in the corner, watching every cut, every moment of uncertainty, every beat of her son's heart. He'll need rest, Deku said. Days at least, maybe weeks. Keep the wound clean. Watch for fever. But. He allowed himself a small smile. I think he's going to make it. Alicent stared at him. Her perfect composure, the armor she wore against the world, had cracked completely. She looked young, exhausted, and completely raw. Why? She whispered. Why did you save him? Because he was dying. That's not, people don't, she pressed her hands to her face. Her shoulders shook. Deku gave her a moment. Then he stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle. Your Grace. Alicent. Your son is going to live. You should be with him when he wakes up. That face should be the first thing he sees. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were red. She looked at him like he was something incomprehensible, something that didn't fit into any category she understood. Thank you, she said. The word seemed to cost her something. I don't know how to. Thank you. You're welcome. She walked to her son's side and took his small hand in hers. Her thumb traced circles on his palm. She didn't look up again. Deku slipped out of the room. The corridor outside was packed. News had spread. Lords and ladies had gathered, some genuinely concerned, others clearly there to be seen expressing concern. Guards lined the walls. And standing apart from all of them, radiating barely contained fury, was Otto Hightower. "You," he said, pointing at Deku. "With me. Now." He didn't wait for agreement. He turned and walked down the corridor, clearly expecting to be followed. Deku considered refusing, but no. Better to know what Otto was planning than to let him scheme in darkness. They ended up in a small council chamber, empty except for the two of them. Otto closed the door and turned on Deku with an expression of absolute loathing. "What game are you playing?" "No game. The prince was injured. I helped. You guided a surgery. You, a foreign stranger with no training, no chain, no credentials, you guided a surgery on a prince of the realm. Would you rather I'd let him die?" Otto's jaw worked. "If that surgery had failed, if the boy had died under your guidance, then I would have failed and a child would be dead. But he didn't die. He's going to live. Isn't that what matters? What matters is that you've put me in an impossible position." Otto paced the small room like a caged animal. "I've been building opposition to you for weeks. Cultivating allies who share my concerns about your influence. And now you've saved my grandson's life. Publicly. With half the court watching." He stopped, staring at Deku. "You've made yourself untouchable. Was that the plan all along?" "I don't have a plan. I saw someone who needed help and I helped. No one does anything without a plan. No one acts without motivation. I do." Deku met his gaze steadily. "I know you don't believe me. I know you've spent your whole life in a world where everyone has an angle, where kindness is just manipulation by another name. But I'm not from your world, Lord Hightower. Where I come from, helping people who need help is just what you do. It's not strategy. It's not politics. It's basic human decency." Otto stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in his expression, not belief, exactly, but maybe a crack in his certainty. "You're either the most dangerous man I've ever met," he said finally, "or the most foolish. I can't decide which." "I've heard that before." "I'm sure you have." Otto moved toward the door, then paused. "My daughter cares about you. I don't know why, but she does. For her sake, only for her sake, I'm going to stop actively working against you. For now." His eyes hardened. "But I'm watching you. And if you hurt this family, any member of it, I will destroy you. I don't care how strong you are. I will find a way. I believe you." Deku nodded slowly. "And I want you to know, I'm not trying to replace anyone or take anything. I'm just trying to help. So you keep saying." Otto opened the door. "We'll see if your actions match your words." He left. Deku stood alone in the empty chamber, thinking about enemies and allies and the thin line between them. Night fell on King's Landing. Deku found himself in the God's Wood, a pocket of ancient forest somehow preserved in the heart of the castle complex. A massive weirwood tree dominated the center, its white bark gleaming in the moonlight, its red leaves rustling in a breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. He wasn't alone. Princess Helaena sat at the base of the weirwood, her silver hair loose and tangled with leaves. She was talking to something, insects, maybe, or the tree itself, or nothing at all. Her voice was soft, sing-song, words that didn't quite form sentences. Falling, always falling, the green lightning in the dark, the cold wakes when the fire lands, wheels and wheels and wheels breaking. Deku approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. But she looked up before he could speak, her violet eyes finding him with unsettling accuracy. "You came. I wasn't sure you'd be here. I'm always here. The tree talks to me. It shows me things. She patted the ground beside her. Sit. You need to see too. He sat. The grass was damp, the air cool. The weirwood's face, carved centuries ago, a solemn visage with weeping red eyes, seemed to watch him. How's your brother? Alive. Because of you. She said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on the weather. Mother cried. I've never seen her cry before. Not even when father hit Emond. Not even when grandfather yells. She turned her strange gaze on him. You make things different. Everywhere you go, things change. Good different or bad different? Both. Everything. She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold. The shadow is waking faster now. It feels you. Your power is like a fire in the dark, it draws attention. Deku felt that chill again, the one that had nothing to do with temperature. Tell me more. What exactly is this shadow? Old. Older than dragons. Older than the first men. It was here when the world was new, and it wanted to make everything cold and dark and still. Her eyes went distant, unfocused. The first men drove it back. The wall was built. It slept. But it never died. You can't kill something that isn't really alive. And my arrival woke it up. Your power woke it up. All that, accumulation. All those people who carried it before you. 9 flames burning as one. It's never felt anything like that. Her grip on his hand tightened. It's testing its boundaries. Pushing at the wall. Learning what's changed while it slept. In a few years, maybe less, it will be ready. Ready for what? To come south. To make everything cold and dark and still. Forever. Deku absorbed this. An ancient apocalyptic entity, awakened by his presence, preparing to destroy the world. Great. Just what he needed. Can it be stopped? Stopped? No. Helena's head tilted. Destroyed? Maybe. If you're strong enough. If everyone is together. If the dragons fly as one. Her eyes came back into focus, meeting his with sudden intensity. That's why you're here. That's why you fell. Not accident, purpose. The world needs you. I need you. I don't understand. You will. She smiled, a strange, dreamy expression that somehow seemed both sad and hopeful. When the time comes, you'll understand everything. The green lightning man. The wheel breaker. The one who wakes the shadow and then puts it back to sleep. She leaned against his shoulder, eyes closing. I've waited so long to meet you. I was starting to think you'd never come. Deku sat very still, this strange prophetic girl resting against him, the weirwood watching them both with its bloody eyes. He had about 1,000 questions and no idea how to ask any of them. Finally, he just said, I'm here now. Yes. Her voice was getting sleepy. You're here now. And everything is going to change. She fell asleep against his shoulder. Deku stayed there for a long time, watching the stars well overhead, thinking about fate and destiny and the responsibilities that came with power. The formal dinner 3 nights later was supposed to be a celebration. Daeron was recovering well, still bedridden, but alert and complaining about being bored, which was the best possible sign. King Viserys had declared a feast in honor of his grandson's survival and the stranger who'd made it possible. Deku would have preferred to skip it. He hated formal events, hated being the center of attention, hated the performative nature of courtly socializing. But refusing a royal summons wasn't really an option. So he put on the best clothes the castle staff could find for him, green fabric, of course, because apparently that was his color now, and made his way to the great hall. The feast was already in full swing. Lords and ladies filled long tables, eating and drinking and competing to be seen. The king sat at the high table, Alicent on one side, Rhaenyra on the other. Other members of the royal family were scattered along the table, Aegon drinking too much, Aemond eating in cold silence, Helaena talking to her food. And there, at the far end of the high table, watching Deku enter with an expression of barely contained hostility, was Daemon Targaryen. Their eyes met. Daemon's jaw tightened. He looked away first. Deku made his way to the high table, where a seat had been left for him, next to Helaena, which he suspected was no accident. The whispers followed him the whole way. Ser Deku. Viserys raised a goblet. Our hero of the hour. Come, sit, eat. Tonight we celebrate life snatched from death's jaws. Deku sat. Helaena immediately leaned over and whispered, Daemon is going to try something. I saw it. Be ready. Try what? But she was already turning back to her plate, arranging her vegetables in some pattern only she understood. The meal proceeded. Course after course, more food than Deku had ever seen in one place. He ate moderately, kept his wits sharp, watched the room. Halfway through the third course, Daemon stood. A toast, he announced, his voice cutting through the hall's noise. To Ser Deku. Our guest. Our hero. He lifted his goblet. The man who came from nowhere, who commands dragons without blood, who saves princes and charms princesses and makes the rest of us look like fools. The room went quiet. That wasn't how toasts usually worked. Daemon's smile was sharp as broken glass. I confess, I've been wondering about our remarkable guest. Where did he come from? Why is he here? What does he want? He took a long drink. And then it occurred to me, we've only heard his story from his own lips. Perhaps a more thorough investigation is warranted. Daemon, Viserys said warningly. This is not, relax, brother. I'm just asking questions. Daemon turned to Deku. You claim to be from another world. You claim your powers are natural. You claim you want nothing from us. He set down his goblet. Prove it. How would you suggest I prove a negative? Fight me. The murmurs that swept the hall were immediate and intense. Daemon, this is ridiculous, Rhaenyra started. Is it? A stranger appears with godlike powers and we just accept him. We let him treat with our dragons, court our women, influence our politics. Daemon's voice rose. I say we test him. If he's what he claims, a hero, a protector, then he should have nothing to fear from a friendly bout. We've already done this, Deku said calmly. I caught your sword between two fingers. What more do you need to see? I need to see you fight for real. Not defense, offense. Show us what you can actually do. Daemon's eyes glittered. Unless you're afraid. The implication hung in the air. Deku understood exactly what was happening. Daemon was trying to provoke him, to make him look either weak or dangerous. Either outcome served Daemon's purposes. But Deku also saw the fear underneath the bravado. Daemon was terrified of becoming irrelevant, terrified of losing everything that defined him. Fear made people do stupid things. I'll fight you, Deku said. The room erupted. But not here, he continued over the noise. Not now. Tomorrow. In the training yard. Full view of whoever wants to watch. He stood, facing Daemon across the table. And when it's over, when you've seen what I can do, I want you to answer a question. What question? Why you're so scared of me? Daemon's face went pale, then red. His hand dropped to Dark Sister's hilt. Tomorrow, he said through gritted teeth. We'll settle this tomorrow. He stormed out of the hall. The room erupted in conversation the moment he was gone. Rhaenyra grabbed Deku's arm. What are you doing? Daemon in a real fight is, I know what he is. Deku gently removed her hand. And tomorrow, he's going to learn what I am. This has been building since I got here. Better to resolve it now than let it fester. He could kill you. No. Deku's voice was certain. He really couldn't. He left the feast shortly after, ignoring the stares and whispers. He had preparations to make. The training yard had never seen a crowd like this. Every balcony, every window, every rooftop with a view was packed. Lords and ladies in their finery. Small folk who'd heard rumors and snuck past the guards. Servants abandoning their duties. Even the dragons seemed restless, their calls echoing from the dragon pit across the city. Deku stood at one end of the yard in simple training clothes, loose pants, fitted shirt, bare feet. No armor. No weapons. He'd considered wearing his hero costume, but decided against it. This wasn't about showing off technology from another world. This was about showing who he was. Daemon entered from the opposite end, and the crowd roared. He wore light armor over riding leathers, dark sister gleaming at his hip. Behind him, visible through the gates, Caraxes waited, not participating, but watching. King Viserys sat on a temporary throne set up at the yard's edge, too sick to stand but too invested to miss this. Rhaenyra stood beside him, face tight with worry. Alicent was on his other side, expression unreadable. Helaena sat at the base of the throne, braiding flowers into a chain, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "The rules are simple," Daemon announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We fight until one yields or cannot continue. First blood is not enough. This ends when it ends." "Agreed," Deku said. "No interference from outside. No dragons, no guards, no intervention from the royal family. Just you and me." "Agreed." Daemon drew Dark Sister in a single fluid motion. The Valyrian steel caught the sunlight, rippling with those characteristic waves. "Then let's begin." He attacked. Daemon was fast, faster than anyone Deku had faced in this world so far. His technique was flawless, the result of decades of training and real combat experience. Dark Sister sang through the air, probing, testing, searching for openings. Deku dodged. He didn't use one for all at first, he wanted to see what Daemon could do, wanted to gauge the gap between them. So he wove between strikes using pure skill and reflexes, the years of hero training paying off in ways Daemon couldn't predict. The prince's frustration grew. His attacks became more aggressive, more committed. He tried feints and combinations that would have killed most opponents twice over. None of them landed. "Stop running," Daemon snarled, pressing forward. "Fight me." "I am fighting you," Deku said, ducking under a horizontal slash. "You just don't recognize it." He caught Daemon's next thrust between his palms, slapped the blade sideways, redirected the force, stepped inside the prince's guard. For a frozen instant, they were face to face, close enough to kiss. "Your technique is incredible," Deku said quietly. "Your speed, your precision, all world-class. But you're angry. You're scared. And that makes you sloppy." He shoved Daemon backward. The prince stumbled, caught himself, came back with a roar and a devastating overhead strike. Deku caught it with one hand. The yard went silent. Dark Sister, the legendary blade of Visenya Targaryen, wielded by the greatest warrior of her age, was trapped in Deku's grip. Daemon strained, muscles bulging, trying to force the blade down. It didn't move. "Now let me show you something," Deku said. One for all ignited. Green lightning crackled across his body, and he moved, faster than Daemon could track, faster than most people could see. He circled the prince in an instant, tapping him on the shoulder from behind. Daemon spun. Deku was already on his other side. Another tap. "You're fighting yesterday's battle," Deku said, moving again, tapping Daemon's chest, his back, his sword arm. "You're trying to prove you're still the strongest, still the most feared. But that was never what made you special." Daemon lashed out wildly. Deku caught his wrist, twisted gently, and disarmed him. Dark Sister clattered across the cobblestones. What made you special, Deku continued, was that you didn't care what anyone thought. You did what you wanted. You flew where you wanted. You were free in a way no one in this kingdom is. He released Demon's wrist. The prince stood there, breathing hard, unarmed, humiliated, and Deku wasn't attacking. I'm not here to take your freedom. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here because the universe threw me here, and while I'm here, I'm going to help people. Deku stepped back. You can be my enemy if you want. You can spend the rest of your life trying to destroy me. But I'd rather you were my ally. Because there's something coming, something worse than either of us, and when it gets here, I'm going to need every dragon and every warrior I can find. Demon stared at him. The fury in his eyes was fading, replaced by something more complex. Confusion. Consideration. You could have killed me, he said slowly. 12 times over. You could have humiliated me in front of everyone. That was never the point. Then what was? Deku extended his hand. The point was showing you that I'm not your enemy. The point was proving that strength doesn't have to mean domination. The point was this. Demon looked at the offered hand. Looked at Deku's face. Looked at the crowd watching in breathless silence. He didn't take the hand. But he nodded, once, sharply. We're not finished. This conversation, we're not finished. I know. But it's a start. Demon retrieved Dark Sister, sheathed it, and walked toward the gates. Caraxes lowered his head as the prince approached, and Demon swung onto the dragon's back in a single fluid motion. King's Landing bores me, he announced. I'm returning to Driftmark. There's work to be done in the stepstones. He flew off without waiting for permission or farewell. The crowd watched him go, then turned back to Deku with expressions of awe. The green had won. Without throwing a single punch. Without spilling a drop of blood. And somehow, that was more terrifying than anything else he could have done. That night, Rhaenyra came to his rooms. Not through the servants' entrance this time. She walked in through the main door, past the guards, not caring who saw. She was wearing a nightgown under a thin robe, her silver hair loose, her violet eyes intense. You could have killed him, she said, closing the door behind her. You could have ended him in front of everyone. Why didn't you? Because killing him wouldn't have solved anything. He'd just be a martyr, and I'd be a murderer. He's tried to kill you twice. He's tried to stop me twice. There's a difference. He doesn't want me dead, he wants me gone. He wants things to go back to how they were before I arrived. They can't. You've changed everything. Rhaenyra crossed the room and stood before him. You've changed me. How? I used to think power was about fear. About making people afraid to oppose you, afraid to challenge you. That's what Demon taught me. That's what this whole rotten court taught me. She reached up and touched his face. But you're more powerful than anyone I've ever seen, and you don't use fear at all. You use. I don't even know what to call it. Hope, Deku said. I try to give people hope. Hope. She tasted the word like something foreign. I haven't felt hope in years. Not real hope. Not until you. Her hand slid from his face to his chest, resting over his heart. You saved my brother today. Half-brother. Don't minimize it. You saved a child who should have died. You didn't ask for anything in return. You just did it. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know how strange that is? In this world. In this court. I'm starting to understand. And today, with Demon, you could have destroyed him. Instead you tried to reach him. To make him understand. She shook her head. Who are you? What kind of person does these things? A hero, Deku said simply. Or I try to be. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes the right thing is impossible. But I try. A hero. Her eyes were wet. We don't have those here. We have knights who break their vows and kings who rot on their thrones and princes who burn cities for spite. We don't have heroes. You do now. She kissed him. It started soft, questioning. His response was gentle, he let her set the pace, let her decide what she wanted. Her hands gripped his shirt. She pulled him closer. The kiss deepened. I want, she breathed against his mouth. I want to feel something real. Something that isn't politics or strategy or fear. I want, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He picked her up. She wrapped her legs around his waist. They moved to the bed. It was intense. Passionate. Real in a way that nothing in Rhaenyra's life had been for years. She'd had lovers, political matches, strategic partners, men who saw her as a prize to be won. None of them had looked at her the way Deku did. None of them had seen her. Afterward, she lay against his chest, her fingers tracing the scars that covered his arms. These, she murmured. All these injuries. How did you survive? Stubbornness, mostly. A lot of luck. Good people who helped me when I needed it. Tell me about them. Your world. Your life before. So he told her. About Japan. About UA. About All Might and his classmates and the villains he'd fought and the people he'd saved. He talked for hours while she listened, asking questions, laughing at funny parts, going quiet at sad ones. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. You left all that behind, she said finally. Everyone you loved. Everything you'd built. Not by choice. But you're not broken. Not angry. You're still you. What else would I be? She propped herself up on an elbow, looking down at him. Anyone else would be destroyed by that loss. Would turn bitter or vengeful or just give up. But you're here, saving children and fighting princes and trying to make things better. Her expression was wondering. You really are a hero, aren't you? Not just the word, the actual thing. I try to be. She kissed him again, softer this time. Then be my hero. Stay. Whatever comes, stay and face it with me. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? He pulled her close. I promise. They slept tangled together, and for the first time in years, neither of them had nightmares. The Faith Militant came for him 3 days later. Deku was in Flea Bottom again, he'd been coming regularly, fixing things, helping where he could. The small folk had started gathering around him, bringing him problems, broken wells, collapsed walls, disputes that needed mediating. He solved what he could and promised to work on what he couldn't. He was in the middle of helping a widow repair her roof when he heard the marching. They came down the street in formation, 30 men in white cloaks and rough-spun robes, rainbow-striped cloaks marking some as officers. They carried clubs and axes and short swords. Their faces were hard, certain, the expressions of men who believed they were doing holy work. Ser Deku. The leader, a tall man with a scarred face and fanatical eyes, stepped forward. Also called the Green. Also called the Sorcerer. The Demon. The Abomination. Deku climbed down from the roof. The widow and her neighbors were backing away, terror in their eyes. I've been called a lot of things. What do you want? The faith has declared you anathema. Your powers are unnatural, born of dark magic and fell pacts. You stand accused of sorcery, heresy, and corrupting the royal family. The leader drew his sword. You will come with us to stand trial. If you resist, we are authorized to use force. Deku looked at the 30 men. Looked at the weapons. Looked at the terrified civilians caught in the crossfire zone. Who authorized this? The High Septon speaks with the voice of the seven. His word is law in matters of faith. And the king? Does the king authorize you to arrest guests under his protection? The leader's certainty flickered. The king's authority ends where the seven's begins. In matters of the soul, you're making a mistake. Deku's voice was calm but firm. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to hurt anyone. But I'm also not going with you. Then you resist arrest. I reject your jurisdiction. If the High Septon wants to talk to me, he can request an audience through proper channels. I'll be happy to explain myself to anyone willing to listen. But armed men showing up to drag me away? That's not justice. That's intimidation. The leader's face hardened. Take him. The faith militant surged forward. Deku moved. He didn't hurt anyone, not really. A tap here, a redirect there, pressure points that made hands go numb and legs give out. 30 men in white attacked with all their righteous fury, and 60 seconds later, 30 men in white were lying on the cobblestones, groaning but uninjured, their weapons scattered across the street. Deku stood in the middle of them, untouched. I could have killed all of you, he said. I chose not to. Remember that when you report back to your High Septon. Tell him I'm willing to talk. Tell him I'll answer any honest question. But tell him also that trying to take me by force is a waste of lives. He looked at the leader, who was struggling to rise on numb legs. Can you walk? Yes. Good. Then walk back to the September of Baelor. Deliver my message. And maybe think about whether your cause is best served by violence or by conversation. He helped the man to his feet. The leader stared at him with an expression caught between hatred and confusion. Why show mercy? We would have killed you if we could. Probably not. But that's not why I showed mercy. Then why? Because you think you're doing the right thing. You're wrong, but you're sincere. That deserves better than a beating. The leader opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. He gestured to his men, those who could walk helping those who couldn't, and they retreated down the street. The small folk emerged from their hiding places, looking at Deku with awe and something that might have been worship. They'll be back, the widow said. The faith doesn't forgive. Maybe. But maybe they'll think about what happened today. Maybe they'll realize there's another way. You really believe that? Deku smiled. I have to. If I don't believe people can change, what's the point of anything? The September of Baelor was the largest religious structure in the Seven Kingdoms, a massive dome of marble and gold that dominated the hill of Visenya. It was here that kings were crowned and blessed, here that the highest ceremonies of the faith were conducted. Deku walked through its doors alone. Word of his arrival had spread. Faithful and priests lined the aisles, watching him with expressions that ranged from hostile to curious to fearful. Candles flickered in their hundreds, casting dancing shadows across the carved faces of the seven who looked down from their alcoves. The High Septon waited at the altar. He was older than Deku expected, white-haired, frail-looking, wrapped in elaborate robes and a crystal crown. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, assessing. You came, the High Septon said. I didn't expect that. You tried to arrest me. I thought we should talk about that. The faith has concerns, the faith has fears. Deku walked up the center aisle, passing between rows of suspicious faces. You've heard stories about me. Strange powers, dragons bowing, walls caught and held. It sounds like sorcery. It sounds like evil. I understand why you're worried. You admit your powers are unnatural. I admit they're unusual. But unnatural. He stopped at the base of the altar, looking up at the High Septon. Your world has dragons that breathe fire. It has dreams that tell the future. It has glass candles and Valyrian steel and 100 other things that defy ordinary explanation. How do you know where natural ends and unnatural begins? The High Septon's lips thinned. The seven teach us, the seven teach you to be good. To be just. To protect the innocent and punish the wicked. That's what I've been doing. Deku spread his hands. Judge me by my actions. I fixed a well so people wouldn't have to drink poison water. I caught a wall so children wouldn't be crushed. I guided a surgery so a boy could live. I stopped a fight without killing anyone. Are these the acts of a demon? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The High Septon raised a hand for silence. Pretty words. But demons are skilled at pretty words. Then give me a test. Something that will prove my intentions. Deku met the old man's eyes. I'll answer any question. I'll submit to any examination. I'm not afraid of truth, truth is what I deal in. The High Septon studied him for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted, not belief, necessarily, but consideration. There is a ritual, he said slowly. Old. Rarely used. A trial of faith, where the accused stands before the seven and speaks their heart. If they lie, the gods see. If they tell truth. He gestured at the statues surrounding them. The gods see that too. I'll do it. The High Septon seemed surprised. You don't want to consult with anyone? Prepare. I don't have anything to hide. The sooner we do this, the better. The ritual was simple but powerful. Deku stood at the center of the sept, surrounded by 7 candles, one for each aspect of the 7. The High Septon intoned ancient words in a language Deku didn't recognize. The crowd pressed close, watching, waiting for something dramatic to happen. And then the questions began. Are you a servant of darkness? No. Have you made pacts with demons or dark powers? No. Do you mean harm to the realm, the royal family, or the faithful? No. Then what are you? What is the source of your power? Deku took a breath. I'm a hero. Where I come from, that's a job, people with powers use them to help others, to protect the innocent, to fight evil. My power was given to me by someone who believed I could use it well. It's not demonic or divine. It's just power. What matters is how I use it. And how do you use it? To save people. To protect people. To make things better, one person at a time. The candles flickered. The statues stared down with their stone eyes. Nothing dramatic happened, no divine intervention, no thunderbolts, no voices from on high. But the High Septon was looking at Deku with an expression that had changed. The suspicion was fading, replaced by something more complicated. I've served the 7 for 50 years, he said quietly. I've heard thousands of confessions, presided over hundreds of trials. I know what guilt looks like, and I know what innocence looks like. He paused. I don't sense guilt in you. Does that mean I'm free to go? It means. The High Septon sighed. It means the faith will not move against you. For now. But understand, we will be watching. We will be judging. And if your actions prove your words false. They won't. Deku bowed slightly. Thank you for listening. That's all I asked. He walked out of the September of Baylor, leaving confused priests and shaken faithful in his wake. Outside, the sun was setting over King's Landing, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He'd faced the faith and won. Not through violence. Not through intimidation. Just by telling the truth and letting people see him clearly. It wasn't a total victory, suspicions would remain, enemies would persist. But it was a start. It was always a start. Alicent found him on the walls of the Red Keep that evening. He was watching the sunset, thinking about everything that had happened, trying to process it all. She approached quietly, her footsteps soft on the stone. The High Septon has declared you, acceptable. Her voice held a note of something he couldn't identify. My father is furious. His plans relied on the faith opposing you. I'm sorry to disappoint him. I'm not. She came to stand beside him, her green eyes reflecting the dying light. You've done something no one has ever done. You've made Otto Hightower irrelevant. His schemes, his alliances, his carefully constructed networks, you've bypassed all of them. I haven't bypassed anything. I've just been honest. That's the same thing, in this court. She turned to face him fully. Daeron woke up today. Fully alert, no complications. He asked for you. He did. He wanted to thank the man who saved his life. A small smile crossed her face. He's decided you're a hero from one of his storybooks. Nothing I say will convince him otherwise. I'm glad he's okay. Thanks to you. She hesitated. Deku, may I call you that? I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Why did you save him? Really? Not the answer you give everyone else. The real reason. Deku considered the question. Because he was a child who was dying, and I could stop it. Because his mother was terrified and I could help. Because. He sighed. Because where I come from, the people I admired most, the real heroes, they never hesitated. They saw someone in trouble and they moved. I'm trying to be like them. Even though we're strangers. Even though we're, technically, your enemies. You're not my enemies. You're just people I haven't helped yet. Alicent stared at him. Something in her expression cracked, the same kind of crack he'd seen after Daeron's surgery. A fissure in the armor she wore against the world. I've spent my whole life fighting Rhaenyra. Every move, every alliance, every decision, it's all been about making sure my children survive when she takes the throne. I've done terrible things. Made terrible choices. Her voice wavered. And then you appear, and you just, help people. Without agenda. Without calculation. You make me feel like I've been living my entire life wrong. You've been surviving. That's not wrong. But it's not living either. It's just. She pressed her hands to her face. I'm so tired, Deku. I'm so tired of fighting, of scheming, of being afraid every single day. And you make it look so easy, being good. Being kind. Like it's the most natural thing in the world. It's not easy. It's never easy. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were wet. When you saved Daeron, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Gratitude that wasn't mixed with calculation. Relief that wasn't followed by fear. Just, pure emotion. She stepped closer. You gave me my son's life. How do I repay that? You don't. That's not how it works. But I want to. I want to give you something. She reached up, tentatively, and touched his face. No one has ever touched me with kindness. Not since I was a girl. My husband sees me as a vessel for heirs. My father sees me as a piece on a board. Even my children see me as protection more than person. Her fingers traced his cheek. But you see me. Alicent, I know this is wrong. I know you're with Rhaenyra. I know this complicates everything. She laughed, a fragile sound. I don't care. For once in my life, I don't care about complications. She kissed him. It was different from Rhaenyra's kiss, softer, more tentative, the kiss of someone who'd been burned so many times she'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Deku felt her trembling, felt the years of pain and loneliness behind this moment. He kissed her back. Gently. Carefully. The way you'd handle something precious and breakable. They stayed on the walls until the stars came out, talking and not talking, existing together in a space that felt set apart from the world of politics and fear. When she finally left, her hand lingered in his for a long moment. Thank you, she whispered. For seeing me. Always. She walked away into the darkness. Deku watched her go, thinking about love and loneliness and the complicated ways people reached for each other. Things were getting complicated. But complicated wasn't the same as wrong. Helaena found him in the God's Wood again, 3 nights later. This time she wasn't alone. Rhaenyra was with her, the 2 half-sisters walking side by side, their silver hair catching the moonlight. They looked like ghosts. Beautiful, impossible ghosts. She told me, Rhaenyra said without preamble. About the shadow. About what's coming. And you believed her. I believe you. And you believe her. Rhaenyra sat down on the ground, heedless of her fine dress. We've been talking. Helaena and I. First time in years, really talking. You have more in common than you think, Deku said. We have you in common, Helaena said, settling beside her half-sister. You're the connection. The thing that makes the wheel turn differently. She looked up at him with those strange, knowing eyes. I've seen futures where you weren't here. They're all red. Blood and fire and dragons falling from the sky. My mother fighting Rhaenyra until the kingdom burns. My brother's dead. Her son's dead. Everyone dead. But that's not what's going to happen. Not anymore. You changed it. She smiled, dreamy and sad and hopeful all at once. The wheel breaker. I've waited so long to meet you. Rhaenyra studied her half-sister with an expression of surprised respect. All these years, I thought she was simple. Lost in her own world. I never realized she was seeing things. No one listened, Helaena said matter-of-factly. No one ever listens. But he does. He listened from the first moment. Because I recognized what she has, Deku said, sitting across from them both. Where I come from, we call them quirks, powers that some people are born with. Helena's ability to see the future, it's a gift. A powerful one. A curse, more like, Helaena murmured. Seeing things you can't prevent. Knowing people will die and not being able to save them. She looked at him. Except now. With you here, things can change. The futures I see are different, brighter. Tell me about the shadow again. As much as you know. Helena's expression went distant. It's old. Older than anything. It came from somewhere else, not this world. It was here before the first men, before the children, before anything that lived. It wanted everything to be cold and dark and still. Like a kind of death, but different. Eternal death. How was it stopped before? The first men and the children worked together. They built the wall, not just ice, but magic. They bound it, trapped it, made it sleep. It's been sleeping for 8,000 years. Her voice dropped. But it doesn't sleep anymore. It heard you arrive, and it woke up. Because of One for All. Because of what One for All is. All that accumulated power, all those lives and wills pressed into one vessel. It's like a beacon in the dark. The shadow had never felt anything like it. She shivered. It's curious. Hungry. It wants to consume you. Then it's my responsibility, Deku said. I woke it up. I have to stop it. Not alone. Rhaenyra's voice was firm. Whatever's coming, you're not facing it alone. The dragons will follow you, Helaena added. All of them. I've seen it. When the time comes, every dragon in the world will fly at your call. And the people. That's the hard part. Rhaenyra's jaw tightened. Uniting them. Getting greens and blacks to work together, getting lords to put aside their ambitions, getting everyone to face the same direction at the same time. My father couldn't do it in his prime. I don't know how anyone could. We start small, Deku said. Build bridges where we can. Show people that cooperation works better than conflict. He looked between the two of them, half-sisters, political rivals, two women who should have been enemies. Like you two. Sitting together. Talking. A month ago, that would have been impossible. A month ago, you weren't here, Helaena said. You make impossible things possible. They sat together under the weirwood tree, three people from different worlds trying to save the one they shared. The next morning, everything changed again. King Viserys collapsed during breakfast. He'd been declining for weeks, everyone could see it. But this was different. His face went gray, his eyes rolled back, and he slid out of his chair before anyone could catch him. The castle erupted into chaos. Deku was there within minutes, pushing through the panicked crowd. Maesters surrounded the king, doing what they could. Alicent was at her husband's side, face pale. Rhaenyra stood frozen, watching her father fade. How bad? Deku asked Grand Maester Melas. Critical. His heart, there's damage we can't repair. Days at most. Perhaps hours. Rhaenyra made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Alicent reached for her hand without thinking, and Rhaenyra took it. They stood there together, two women who'd spent years as enemies, united by the imminent loss of the man who'd made them both. Viserys' eyes fluttered open. He saw them standing together, hands clasped. My daughters, he whispered. Both of you. Finally. Father, Rhaenyra started. Listen. Please. His voice was barely audible. I've failed you both. Let my advisors poison you against each other. Should have stopped it long ago. His cloudy eyes found Deku, standing behind them. You. The green one. Deku stepped closer. Your Grace. Take care of them. Both of them. And. Viserys' breath rattled. And tell Otto I knew. About his schemes. I just couldn't stop. His eyes closed. His breathing continued, but shallower. Unconsciousness, not death, but death wasn't far behind. The room fell silent except for the king's labored breathing. Rhaenyra and Alicent stood frozen, hands still clasped, watching the father and husband they'd shared slip toward the end. And outside the window, visible against the morning sky, dragons circled the city, restless, sensing change, waiting for whatever came next. Chapter 3, Fire and Will King Viserys I Targaryen died 3 days later. He went quietly in the end, a last rattling breath, a final flutter of his eyelids, and then stillness. Rhaenyra was holding one of his hands. Alicent held the other. Deku stood behind them both, a silent presence, bearing witness. The bells began tolling within the hour. Their sound rolled across King's Landing like a tide, heavy and final, announcing to 500,000 souls that the realm had changed forever. The king is dead, Grand Maester Melas intoned, his voice cracking. Long live the queen. Rhaenyra didn't move. She stared at her father's face, peaceful now, younger somehow, the pain of his long illness finally erased. Tears tracked silently down her cheeks. Alicent released the dead king's hand and stepped back. Her expression was complicated, grief and relief and fear all mixed together. She looked at Rhaenyra, then at Deku, then at the door where Otto Hightower was undoubtedly waiting with his plans and his schemes. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we see if everything we've built holds together. Deku moved to stand between the two women. Rhaenyra is the named heir. You've publicly acknowledged her claim. Your children have positions of honor waiting for them. The foundation is there. The foundation. Alicent laughed, a brittle sound. My father has spent 20 years building a different foundation. One that puts Aegon on the throne and Rhaenyra in a grave. Your father's foundation depends on you supporting it. Do you? Alicent was quiet for a long moment. Then, no. Not anymore. She looked at Rhaenyra. I'm tired of being his piece on the board. I'm tired of seeing you as the enemy when the real enemy has been pulling our strings all along. Rhaenyra turned from her father's body. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. You mean that? I mean it. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing something because I want it, not because my father told me to. Alicent extended her hand. Can we do this? Actually do this? Not as enemies pretending to cooperate, but as something else. Rhaenyra stared at the offered hand. Years of hatred and fear and rivalry hung between them. Years of being used against each other by men who saw them as tools. She took Alicent's hand. Something else, she agreed. I don't know what to call it yet. But something else. The door burst open. Otto Hightower strode in, his face a mask of controlled urgency, which slipped into confusion when he saw his daughter and stepdaughter holding hands over the king's body. What is the meaning of this? Alicent, we need to move quickly. The succession is settled, Alicent said coldly. Rhaenyra is queen. I've acknowledged her claim. My children will serve in the positions we've already arranged. Otto's face went pale. You can't, the plans we've made, everything depends on me being your obedient daughter. I know. Alicent released Rhaenyra's hand and faced her father fully. I'm done, father. I'm done being your weapon against a woman who was my friend before you turned us against each other. I'm done sacrificing my children's futures for your ambition. This is madness. He's influenced you. Otto pointed at Deku. The sorcerer, he's corrupted your mind somehow, he saved Daeron's life. When your grandchild was dying, he saved him without being asked, without wanting anything in return. Alicent's voice cracked. When is the last time you did something without wanting something in return, father? Otto opened his mouth. Closed it. For once, the master politician had no words. The queen requires space to grieve, Deku said, stepping forward. Lord Otto, I suggest you use this time to reconsider your position. The succession is settled. The question now is whether you want to spend the rest of your life opposing that settlement, or whether you want to find a place in the new order. Otto's eyes blazed with hatred. You think you've won. You think you've outmaneuvered me. But you don't understand this kingdom. You don't understand these people. They'll never accept, they'll accept peace, Deku interrupted. They'll accept stability. They'll accept not having to watch their sons march off to die in a civil war over which Targaryen sits on a fancy chair. He met Otto's gaze steadily. I'm not your enemy, Lord Otto. I've never been your enemy. But if you force a conflict, if you try to tear apart what we're building, I'll stop you. And you know you can't stop me. The silence stretched. Otto looked at his daughter, at the new queen, at the impossible stranger who'd upended everything. The calculation behind his eyes was visible, weighing options, measuring outcomes, searching for an angle. Finally, his shoulders slumped. I require time to consider my options. Take all the time you need. Just don't take any actions that can't be undone. Deku gestured toward the door. The queen will summon you when she's ready to discuss your future. Otto left. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, slower than they'd been coming in. Rhaenyra let out a breath she'd been holding. That was. I've never seen him back down before. Ever. He knows when he's beaten. He'll adapt or he won't, but at least he won't be making trouble while he figures it out. And if he makes trouble anyway? Then we deal with it. Deku looked at both women. But right now, you need to grieve. Both of you. Whatever else he was, Viserys was your father and your husband. Take time to feel that before the politics swallow you whole. Alicent nodded slowly. Rhaenyra moved back to her father's side, sitting in the chair where she'd kept vigil these past 3 days. Deku slipped out, leaving them to their mourning. The coronation happened a week later. It was the largest gathering King's Landing had seen in decades. Lords from every corner of the realm, having received ravens announcing both Viserys' death and Rhaenyra's accession, flooded into the capital. Most came ready to declare for one side or another in the expected civil war, and found instead a unified royal family presenting a united front. The September of Baelor was packed. Every seat filled, every aisle crowded, every gallery stuffed with nobles jockeying for position. The High Septon stood at the altar, the crown of Jaehaerys the Conciliator resting on a velvet pillow before him. Rhaenyra walked up the center aisle alone. She wore black and red, the colors of her house, a gown that was elegant without being ostentatious. Her silver hair was braided with rubies. Her face was calm, determined, every inch a queen. Behind her, in positions of honor, walked Alicent and her children. Aegon looked sullen but compliant. Aemon Single Eye watched everything with calculating intensity. Helaena moved in her dreamy way, flowers braided into her hair. And Daeron, recovered now, walking with only a slight stiffness, kept looking at Deku with hero worship in his young eyes. Deku stood near the front, in a place of honor he'd tried to refuse but been overruled on. He wore green, of course, the small folk expected it now, and Rhaenyra had insisted. He was uncomfortable with the attention, but this wasn't about his comfort. The ceremony was long and elaborate. Prayers were intoned, oaths were sworn, holy oils were anointed. Through it all, Rhaenyra stood steady, her voice clear and strong when she needed to speak. Finally, the High Septon lifted the crown. In the sight of gods and men, I proclaim Rhaenyra of House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lady of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. He placed the crown on her head. The September erupted in cheers. Whatever doubts individual lords might harbor, whatever schemes they might be nursing in private, in this moment they all shouted their acclaim for the new queen. The sound was enormous, echoing off the marble walls, filling the space with a wall of noise. Rhaenyra turned to face her people. The crown glinted on her silver hair. Her violet eyes swept the crowd, and for just a moment, they found Deku's. She smiled. Tiny, private, just for him. Then she raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. My father dreamed of a peaceful succession, she said, her voice carrying easily through the hall. He named me heir. He prepared me to rule. His final wish was that I work with my stepmother, with my siblings, to build a realm that doesn't tear itself apart over questions of blood and claim. She turned slightly, gesturing to Alicent. I intend to honor that wish. Queen Alicent will serve as my principal advisor. Her wisdom and experience will guide us through the challenges ahead. Prince Aegon will be named Prince of Dragonstone and heir presumptive until I produce children of my own. A small murmur at that, the lack of mention of Daemon, her nominal husband, was notable. Prince Aemond will command our naval forces. Princess Helaena will serve as the realm's voice, her insights have proven invaluable, and they will continue to guide us. Another pause. The crowd was hanging on every word. And Ser Deku, the man who appeared from nowhere and has already saved lives, stopped conflicts, and brought hope to the forgotten corners of this city, will serve as my champion. Not hand, not king consort, not any political title that would invite scheming and jealousy. Simply my champion. The sword that protects. The shield that guards. The hero this realm has never had but always needed. Deku felt every eye in the September turn to him. He wanted to disappear into the floor. But Rhaenyra had warned him this was coming, had argued him down when he tried to refuse. The people need a symbol, she'd said. Someone who represents what we're trying to build. Someone who helps without agenda, who protects without condition. They need to see you standing with me. So he stood. He met the stares without flinching. He nodded once to the queen. The cheering resumed, louder than before. Whatever the lords thought privately, the small folk in the galleries were ecstatic. The green. Champion of the queen. It was the stuff of stories, and they loved stories. The feast afterward was interminable. Deku escaped as soon as he decently could, slipping out a side door and finding his way to the walls of the Red Keep. The night air was cool on his face, a relief after the heat of too many bodies packed into too small a space. He wasn't alone for long. Alicent found him first, appearing out of the shadows with a grace that spoke to years of navigating the treacherous waters of court. "Escaping your adoring public?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Escaping the pressure to drink things that could strip paint. What is that stuff they keep offering me?" "Arbor Gold. The good vintage." She came to stand beside him, looking out at the city lights. "You did well today. Standing there, being seen. I know how much you hated it. It was necessary. Most necessary things are hateful." She was quiet for a moment. "Daeron won't stop talking about you. He's decided you're Serwyn of the Mirror Shield reborn. He wants to be a hero like you when he grows up. There are worse ambitions. There are. I just..." She sighed. "I never thought I'd see the day when my son worshipped a man who isn't trying to use him for something. It's strange. Good strange, but strange. He's a good kid. They all are, underneath the politics. Even Aegon, if someone could get him to stop drinking and start caring. That would take a miracle. I've done miracles before." She laughed, a real laugh, surprised and warm. "You have, haven't you? Falling from the sky, catching walls, saving dying children. What's one more?" They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then footsteps announced another arrival. Rhaenyra appeared, still wearing her crown, though she'd shed the more elaborate elements of her coronation gown. Behind her, moving in that ethereal way of hers, came Helaena. "Found you," Rhaenyra said. "Alicent too. Good. Is something wrong?" "No. Something's right." She came to stand on Deku's other side, so that he was flanked by the two women who'd been enemies and were now, something else. "We survived. The coronation went smoothly. No one tried to start a civil war. My father's dream is actually happening." "It's a start," Alicent said. "The lords will test you. Some will rebel. Otto's allies won't accept this lying down. Let them test. Let them rebel." Rhaenyra's voice was fierce. "For the first time in my life, I'm not alone. I have allies I actually trust. I have a champion who can't be bought or threatened. I have." She glanced at Alicent. "I have a sister, if she'll have me." Alicent blinked. "Sister? We were raised together. We were friends before the politics. I'm tired of pretending that didn't happen." Rhaenyra extended her hand again, just as Alicent had done over Viserys' body. "Sister." Alicent took her hand. "Sister." Helaena drifted forward, inserting herself between the two older women with a serene smile. "The three of us," she said. "I've seen it. Not enemies, not rivals. Something new. Something better." "The three of you?" Deku asked. Helaena looked at him with those knowing eyes. "And you?" "The four of us. The wheel breaks and reforms, but this time it turns in a new direction." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers cool and delicate. "I've been dreaming about this for years. I was starting to think it would never come true." Rhaenyra and Alicent exchanged glances, complicated, understanding, reaching some silent agreement. "She's not wrong," Rhaenyra said. "The three of us, and you. Whatever we're becoming, it's all of us together or it doesn't work." "I don't understand." "You will." Alicent's voice was soft. "When you're ready." They stood there together on the walls of the Red Keep, a queen dowager, a princess prophet, and a hero from another world. Four people who shouldn't have fit together, who the politics of this realm had tried to force into opposition. Fitting together anyway. The first rebellion came 3 weeks later. Lord Boros Baratheon of Storm's End declared for Aegon's claim, denouncing Rhaenyra as a usurper and Alicent as a traitor to her own blood. He called his banners and marched north with 8,000 men. The news arrived at midnight. The small council convened within the hour. 8,000 men, Lord Corlys Velaryon reported. He'd returned to court after Viserys' death, bringing the power of House Velaryon and its massive fleet to support his stepdaughter's claim. More if other Stormlords join him. This could spark a general uprising. It won't. Deku stood at the map table, studying the terrain between Storm's End and King's Landing. If we move fast enough, if we end this quickly enough, no one else will have time to join. You propose to face 8,000 men? Otto asked. He'd remained at court, stripped of his position as hand but kept close where he could be watched. His tone was skeptical but no longer hostile. He'd seen which way the wind was blowing. I propose to face Lord Boros. Just him. If I defeat him, publicly, decisively, without killing him, his army has no leader and no cause. You'd fly to Storm's End? Alone? Not fly. Run. Deku looked up from the map. It's about 200 miles. I can cover that in a few hours at full speed. I'll arrive before his army has even finished mobilizing. The council stared at him. 200 miles, Lord Corlys said slowly. In a few hours. On foot. I've done further. Rhaenyra cut in before anyone else could express disbelief. Let him do it. We've all seen what he's capable of. If he says he can reach Storm's End before Boros marches, I believe him. And when you arrive? Alicent asked. Storm's End is a fortress. They won't simply let you walk in. I'm not going to walk. I'm going to knock. He left at dawn. The city was barely stirring when Deku slipped out through the river gate, moving at jogging pace until he cleared the immediate environs. Then he opened up. Full cowling blazed across his body. Green lightning crackled. The world became a blur of motion as he accelerated to speeds that would have been impossible back home, let alone in this primitive world. He ran south and east, following the King's Road when it suited him, cutting cross-country when it didn't. Fields and forests streaked past. Villages were there and gone in heartbeats. Peasants who happened to be looking the right way saw a green streak flash past and spent the rest of their lives telling stories about it. 200 miles. 4 hours. He arrived at Storm's End with the morning sun still climbing. The castle was everything the story said, a massive drum tower of dark stone, walls so thick that legends claimed storms had battered them for years without effect. It perched on a cliff overlooking Shipbreaker Bay, where waves crashed against the rocks with constant fury. Lord Boros's army was still assembling in the fields before the castle. 8,000 men in various states of readiness, some still pulling on armor, others eating breakfast around campfires. They'd been expecting days of marching before any conflict. They were not expecting a single man to come running out of the western treeline at impossible speed. Deku stopped at the edge of the camp. Soldiers who'd been nearby stumbled back, weapons raised, shouting in alarm. The commotion spread rapidly, men grabbing swords, horses rearing, officers bellowing orders. I need to speak with Lord Boros Baratheon. Deku called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. Tell him the Queen's champion has come to discuss his rebellion. It took 20 minutes for the message to reach the castle and for Lord Boros to appear. He came riding out with a guard of 50 knights, his black and yellow banner snapping in the sea wind. He was a large man, broad and powerful, with a beard that bristled with obvious fury. You dare come here alone, he roared, reining up 30 feet away. You dare threaten me in my own lands? No threats. I came to talk. Talk. You serve a usurper queen. There is nothing to discuss. There's everything to discuss. You're about to march 8,000 men to their deaths, and for what? A claim that even the claimant doesn't support. Deku spread his hands. Prince Aegon has accepted his position as heir presumptive. Queen Alicent supports Rhaenyra's rule. The succession is settled. You're rebelling against a kingdom that's at peace. Lies. Hightower propaganda. Then come back to King's Landing with me. See for yourself. Talk to Aegon, talk to Alicent, see with your own eyes that no one is being forced or coerced. Deku took a step forward. I know you're angry. I know you made promises, built alliances, based on a different outcome. But fighting now means death, death for your men, death for your house, death for a cause that no longer exists. Borosa's face was purple with rage. You think you can come here, one man, and lecture me about causes? About death? I am Lord of Storm's End. The blood of Orys Baratheon runs in my veins. I will not be, Lord Boros. Deku's voice hardened. I'm not lecturing you. I'm offering you a choice. Come back to King's Landing peacefully, confirm the situation for yourself, and if you're still unsatisfied, we can discuss it like reasonable men. Or. He let one for all flicker across his skin, green lightning dancing over his arms. Or we can see which of us is stronger. And I can promise you, that conversation won't end the way you want. The knights around Boros shifted nervously. They'd heard stories. The Green. The man who caught falling walls. The man who stopped Prince Daemon's blade with his bare hands. Boros saw his men's hesitation. His jaw worked. You would challenge me? Here. In front of my own army? I'd rather not. I'd rather you make the smart choice. But if you insist on the stupid one. Deku shrugged. I've fought stupid before. It never wins. The tension stretched. Borosa's hand hovered over his sword hilt. His knights looked ready to flee or fight, uncertain which would be worse. Finally, Boros spat on the ground. Fine. I'll come to King's Landing. I'll see this settled succession for myself. His eyes blazed. But if I find any evidence of coercion, any sign that this is all a farce, then you'll have every right to be angry. But you won't find it. Because it's real. Deku allowed himself a small smile. Now. Would you prefer to ride, or shall I carry you? I can make the journey much faster, but I've heard it's not pleasant for passengers. Boros stared at him. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a harsh, grudging sound. You've got stones, stranger. I'll give you that. Stones the size of boulders. He turned to his knights. Stand down. Make camp. I'm going to King's Landing to see what's what. He looked back at Deku. And I'll ride, thank you. Whatever dignity I have left, I'd like to keep it. The return journey took 3 days by horse, significantly longer than Deku's outbound run, but necessary for Borosa's comfort and dignity. They rode together, just the two of them, with the Baratheon army ordered to wait at Storm's End pending further instructions. They talked along the way. Deku learned about Storm's End, about the Baratheons, about the complicated web of promises and obligations that had put Boros on a path toward rebellion. In turn, he shared what he could about himself, a carefully edited version that left out the impossible details while conveying the essential truth. By the time they reached King's Landing, Boros was no longer hostile. Suspicious, yes. Skeptical, certainly. But the rage had faded, replaced by a grudging curiosity. You really came all that way alone, he said as they approached the city gates. 200 miles in a morning. I didn't believe it when you first appeared, but I've had 3 days to think about it, and... He shook his head. What are you? Someone who wants peace. Beyond that. Deku shrugged. Does it matter? It matters to me. To everyone who's going to have to deal with you. Boros studied him. You're not natural. You're not a sorcerer, I've met sorcerers, and you don't feel like them. You're something else. Something new. Maybe that's exactly what this kingdom needs. Something new. They rode through the gates, past guards who saluted and small folk who cheered. The Green was back, and he'd brought a rebel lord without bloodshed. The story was already spreading. Rhaenyra received Lord Boros in the throne room. She sat on the Iron Throne with hard-won composure, the crown on her head, the authority of the realm wrapped around her like armor. Beside her stood Alicent, Aegon, Aemond, and Helaena, the unified royal family on full display. Boros knelt. He exchanged words with Aegon, who confirmed, grudgingly but clearly, that his position was his own choice. He spoke with Alicent, who assured him with cold dignity that she acted of her own will. He even approached Helaena, who looked at him with those strange eyes and said, "The stag bends, and the realm grows stronger. You made the right choice, Lord Boros." By the end of the audience, the rebellion was over. Boros bent the knee formally, his oath witnessed by 100 lords. His army was ordered to disperse peacefully. Storm's End remained loyal to the crown. One crisis resolved. A dozen more waiting. Over the next several months, Deku became the Queen's troubleshooter. Whenever a lord grew restless, whenever a dispute threatened to escalate, whenever the old patterns of violence and vendetta seemed ready to reassert themselves, Deku was dispatched. Sometimes he fought. More often he talked. Always, he resolved the issue with minimum bloodshed and maximum display of the new order's strength. He ran to the Riverlands when House Bracken and House Blackwood renewed their ancient feud. He mediated a settlement that left both houses grumbling but at peace. He sailed to the Iron Islands when Dalton Greyjoy threatened to raid the western coast. He didn't fight Greyjoy, he simply demonstrated what would happen if raiding continued, reducing a practice ship to splinters with a single punch while the Red Kraken watched. Dalton decided that other opportunities existed. He even flew north, Dragonback, with Helaena at his side, to treat with Lord Cregan Stark of Winterfell. That meeting was different. Cregan was different. He listened to Helena's warnings about the threat beyond the wall with no skepticism at all. "We know," he said simply. "The North remembers. We've been preparing for generations, even when the South forgot. Will you stand with us when the time comes? The North stands with the realm against the darkness. Always has. Always will." Cregan's grey eyes met Deku's. "You're not of this world. My green seers told me you'd come. The green fire that wakes the ancient cold. I didn't mean to wake it. Intent doesn't matter. Results do. It's awake now, and it's testing the wall. In 5 years, maybe less, it'll be ready to move." Cregan stood, extending his hand in the northern fashion. "When that day comes, call the banners. The North will answer." They shook hands. An alliance forged, based not on politics but on survival. Through it all, Deku's relationships with the three women deepened. Rhaenyra was fire and steel. Their connection was passionate, intense, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. She challenged him, pushed him, refused to let him be less than his best. In private, she was softer, vulnerable in ways she showed no one else, trusting him with the fears and doubts that queens weren't supposed to have. Alicent was ice and silk. Their relationship grew slowly, a careful thawing of defenses built over a lifetime. She taught him about the court, about the subtle games of power that he found so distasteful but needed to understand. In return, he gave her something she'd never had, someone who saw her as a person rather than a piece. Their intimacy, when it finally came, was tender and healing, two people choosing each other despite everything that should have kept them apart. Helaena was moonlight and mystery. She understood things about him that he didn't understand himself. She saw the future, but she also saw the present with a clarity that cut through all pretense. Their bond was spiritual as much as physical, two people who perceived the world differently than everyone around them, finding solace in each other's strangeness. The three women had their own relationship too. Sisters by choice if not by blood, they supported each other in ways that surprised everyone who'd expected them to remain rivals. They shared Deku openly, without jealousy, not because they didn't care, but because they'd all realized that traditional arrangements didn't suit traditional people, and none of them were traditional. "This shouldn't work," Rhaenyra said one night, lying in bed with Deku while Alicent read in a chair nearby and Helaena braided flowers on the floor. "The three of us, one of you. The court gossips endlessly. Let them gossip." Alicent didn't look up from her book. "What are they going to do, disapprove us to death?" The Faith tried to have Deku arrested. It didn't work out well for them. Helena's voice was dreamy. "Besides, the gods don't care about our sleeping arrangements. They care about the ice waking up. They care about the darkness coming south. Everything else is details." Rhaenyra propped herself up on one elbow. "You really believe that? That what we're doing here, this strange family we're building, it matters for more than just us?" Helaena looked up, her violet eyes catching candlelight. "Of course it matters. You're building trust. You're learning to work together instead of against each other. When the long night comes, that's what will save us. Not swords or dragons, unity. Love." She smiled. "You're practicing for the end of the world. That's either very romantic or very disturbing. It's both. Most important things are." The news came from the north in Deku's second year in Westeros. A Night's Watch ranger stumbled into Castle Black, half dead from cold and terror. He babbled about the forest dying, whole swaths of trees going white and silent in a single night. He talked about lakes freezing solid when the sun was shining. He described shapes moving in the darkness, shapes that weren't animals, weren't men, weren't anything living. And he described the wall weeping. Actual moisture running down its face, even in the depths of winter cold. As if the magic that held it together was straining against something on the other side. Lord Commander of the Night's Watch sent ravens to every lord in the realm. Most ignored them, more northern nonsense, more wildling superstition. But Rhaenyra read the message aloud in the small council, and when she finished, Helaena spoke. 3 years, she said. Maybe less. That's how long we have. Until what, exactly? Lord Corlys asked. Until the darkness breaks free. Until the army of the dead marches south. Until everything we've built gets tested against an enemy that doesn't negotiate, doesn't surrender, doesn't stop. Helena's voice was flat, reciting facts. I've seen it. Deku's seen it. And now you're all going to have to see it too. We need to prepare, Deku said. Not just militarily, though that too. We need to unite the realm completely. Every lord, every banner, every dragon. When this thing comes, half measures won't cut it. How do you unite a realm against a threat most people think is a legend? Otto asked. He'd gradually returned to a position of influence, not hand, but advisor, his sharp mind too useful to waste even if his ambitions had been curbed. You show them. Deku stood. You take them north. You let them see what's coming with their own eyes. And then you give them something to fight for, not just something to fight against. What do you mean? I mean hope. He looked around the council table. That's what's been missing from this kingdom since before I arrived. Everyone's so busy scheming against each other that they've forgotten what it feels like to work for something. Give them a cause. Give them a future worth fighting for. Make them believe that if they stand together, they can actually win. And if they can't win? Otto pressed. If this threat is as powerful as you say, then we die trying. But I'd rather die fighting for something than die fighting over nothing. Deku's jaw tightened. I've faced impossible odds before. I've seen people triumph when everything said they should fail. It's possible. It's always possible. You just have to refuse to give up. Silence around the table. Then Rhaenyra spoke. The Queen's progress. We take a portion of the court north, lords who need convincing, skeptics who need proof. We show them the wall. We show them what the Night's Watch is facing. And we show them that the Crown is taking this seriously. That would require dragons, Corlys said. Many dragons. The north is vast, and the wall is far. Then we bring the dragons. Rhaenyra smiled grimly. All of them. Let the realm see the fire of House Targaryen flying in formation. Let them understand that this is real. The logistics alone are surmountable. Everything is surmountable. She stood, matching Deku's posture. 3 years, Helaena said. We have 3 years to unite the realm and prepare for war against an enemy we barely understand. The time for caution is over. The time for action is now. The Queen's progress began a month later. It was the largest movement of nobility in living memory. Rhaenyra led personally, with Alicent at her side. Lords from every kingdom were invited, in terms that made clear refusal wasn't really an option. Dragons flew overhead, Syrax, Caraxes, Daemon had returned, grudgingly, having run out of enemies in the Stepstones, Vhagar, Vermithor, and a dozen others. The sky over the column was never empty. Deku ran alongside, mostly, his stamina outpaced even the best horses, and riding made him restless. He ranged ahead, scouting, ensuring the path was clear. At night, he returned to camp and circulated among the lords, talking, building relationships, being seen. You're better at this than you pretend, Rhaenyra told him one evening, watching him charm a suspicious Lord Tully with genuine interest in the man's fishing techniques. I'm not charming anyone. I'm just asking questions and listening to answers. That's what charm is, you beautiful idiot. He laughed. She kissed him. Nearby, Alicent and Helaena watched with matching smiles. The family they'd built was strange. The arrangement they'd reached was stranger. But it worked. Against all odds, against all expectations, it worked. The wall took everyone's breath away. 700 feet of ice, stretching from horizon to horizon, cold radiating off it even in the moderate weather they'd brought. Castle Black huddled at its base, a collection of buildings that had seen better centuries. The Night's Watch, depleted, underfunded, forgotten by the southern kingdoms, turned out in force to greet their royal visitors. Lord Commander Desmond Mallister was a grizzled man with haunted eyes. He'd served on the wall for 30 years and seen things in the last 2 that made all those previous years feel like peace. Thank you for coming, Your Grace. Thank you for believing. Show us, Rhaenyra said. Show us everything. He showed them. The dying forest. The frozen lakes. The places where the wall wept and groaned. The captured wight, bound with iron and kept in a frozen cell, still twitching, still trying to kill, despite having been dead for months. The lords who'd been skeptical found themselves struggling to maintain their composure. The wight alone convinced most of them. It was wrong in a way that no amount of description could capture, a thing that had been human and wasn't anymore, animate without life, moving without purpose beyond destruction. The others made it, Desmond said. The White Walkers, the Cold Ones, whatever name you prefer. They're out there, beyond the wall. We've seen them, from a distance, thank the gods. If they catch you, they don't just kill you. They take you. Make you into one of their soldiers. How do you kill them? Asked Lord Jason Lannister, his usual swagger completely absent. The Whites? Fire. Dragon glass. Valyrian steel, we think, though no one's tested it. The others themselves. Desmond shook his head. Same, maybe. No one's fought one and survived to report back. Dragonglass, Deku said. Where do we get it? Dragonstone has vast deposits. It's been mined there for centuries, though no one's had much use for it. They do now. Start mining. Start stockpiling. Every village between here and King's Landing needs a supply. He looked at Rhaenyra. Can you arrange that? I can. I will. Her face was pale but determined. What else? Training. The Night's Watch knows how to fight these things, or at least, they're learning. That knowledge needs to spread. Every knight, every soldier, every man and woman capable of holding a weapon needs to understand what they're facing and how to kill it. And the dragons? Daemon spoke up for the first time. He'd been uncharacteristically quiet since seeing the white. You said fire kills them. We have plenty of fire. Dragons will be essential. But they can't do everything. The others are intelligent, they'll adapt. They'll find ways to neutralize our advantages. We need depth. Layers of defense. If one strategy fails, we need another ready to deploy. The council continued late into the night. Plans were made, resources allocated, responsibilities assigned. For the first time and perhaps ever, the great lords of Westeros worked together without scheming, without plotting, without trying to gain advantage over each other. The threat was too real, too visceral, too close. 3 days later, it all almost fell apart. Otto Hightower made his move. He'd been quiet for so long that Deku had almost forgotten to watch him. But Otto hadn't changed, he'd just been patient. Waiting for an opportunity. He found it in the chaos of the Queen's progress. Far from King's Landing, with most of the realm's military strength scattered along the northern road, with attention focused on the wall and its horrors, the moment was perfect. The conspiracy was elegant. Key lords had been contacted months earlier, their grievances nurtured, their ambitions stoked. A faction within the Gold Cloaks had been suborned. A ship waited in the harbor at Eastwatch by the Sea, ready to carry rescued members of the royal family to safety in Essos while their usurper was dealt with. The target wasn't Rhaenyra. Otto wasn't stupid, he knew Deku would protect the queen with his life and probably succeed. The target was Helaena. She was taken at night, silently, while Deku was meeting with the Lord Commander and Rhaenyra was conferring with Daemon about dragon deployments. For men, moving quietly, exploiting gaps in security that had developed during the long journey. Deku felt something wrong before he understood what it was. He was mid-sentence, explaining a tactical concept to Desmond, when a chill ran down his spine. Not physical cold, something else. A wrongness. A gap where something should be. Helaena, he said, cutting himself off. Something's wrong. He moved. Full cowling blazed. He crossed Castle Black in heartbeats, blowing through doors and walls without slowing. Helena's chambers were empty, the guards unconscious, a small vial on the floor where someone had dropped it, sleeping poison, probably. The trail wasn't hard to follow. 4 sets of footprints in the dust, heading toward the eastern gate. Beyond that, Eastwatch. Ships. Escape. Deku ran. He caught them 3 miles from Castle Black, in a narrow pass where the road wound between rocky outcroppings. The 4 men had horses, they'd been pushing hard. But horses couldn't outrun one for all. He landed in front of them with a crack of displaced air and green lightning arcing off his body. The horses screamed and reared. One of the men fumbled for a crossbow. Put it down, Deku said. His voice was calm. His eyes were not. Put everything down. Let her go. And maybe we can discuss this like civilized people. Stay back. The lead kidnapper held a knife to Helena's throat. She was conscious but groggy, clearly drugged. Stay back or I'll, Deku moved. He didn't hurt them badly. But he didn't hold back as much as he usually did, either. Bones broke. Joints dislocated. Weapons were shattered, armor crumpled, screams cut short by impacts too fast to see. It was over in less than 3 seconds. 4 men lay on the ground, incapacitated but alive. Helaena slumped where she'd been dropped, struggling to stay awake. Deku caught her before she hit the ground. I'm here. You're safe. I've got you. Knew you'd come, she mumbled, her eyes barely open. Saw you coming. Green lightning in the dark. Always comes. Always. He carried her back to Castle Black at a run, one arm supporting her back, the other under her knees. She clung to him, barely conscious, but her grip was fierce. Otto's plot unraveled within hours. The captured kidnappers talked. The bribed gold cloaks were identified and arrested. The ship at Eastwatch was seized. A paper trail emerged, connecting it all back to Otto and the handful of lords who'd joined his conspiracy. Rhaenyra wanted blood. Daemon offered to provide it, enthusiastically and creatively. Even Alicent, who, despite everything, was still Otto's daughter, didn't argue for mercy. But it was Deku who decided Otto's fate. The wall, he said. Send him to the wall. That's too good for him, Rhaenyra snarled. He tried to take Helaena. He tried to restart the war. He should burn. And then what? He becomes a martyr. His allies have a cause. The unity we've built starts cracking. Deku shook his head. Send him to the wall. Make him take the black. Let him spend the rest of his life defending against the very threat he ignored while he was scheming. It's fitting. It's merciful. It's practical. And yes, it's merciful. Those aren't mutually exclusive. He met Rhaenyra's eyes. You're queen. You can execute him if you want. But I'm asking you to consider whether executing him actually makes things better, or whether it just makes us feel better in the moment. Rhaenyra held his gaze. She was still furious, that hadn't faded. But she was also queen, and queens had to think beyond their fury. Fine. The wall. But he goes in chains, and he never comes back. If he ever sets foot south of the gift, he dies. No trial, no appeal, just death. Agreed. Otto took the news with surprising dignity. He'd expected execution, the wall was almost a reprieve. As he was led away, he paused beside Alicent. I did what I thought was right, he said. Everything I did for this family. No, father. Alicent's voice was cold. You did it for yourself. You told yourself it was for us, but it was always about your ambition, your legacy, your need to control everything. She stepped back. Goodbye, father. May the watch serve you better than your family did. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. What was there to say? They put him on a cart and sent him north, toward the wall he'd dismissed as unimportant for so long. He would spend his remaining years fighting the threat he tried to ignore, surrounded by men who had no use for politics or schemes. It was, Deku thought, appropriately ironic. The Queen's progress continued without further incident. They visited every major holdfast in the north, showing lords the evidence of the coming threat, binding them to the cause. Cregan Stark proved invaluable, his endorsement carried weight throughout the region, and his knowledge of the northern terrain and defenses was essential for planning. By the time they turned south, the realm was more unified than it had been in generations. Still fractious, still full of old grudges and simmering resentments, but united in understanding that something was coming, and that survival required cooperation. We have 2 years, Helaena said as they watched the wall recede behind them. Maybe a little more. The darkness is gathering strength, but it's patient. It remembers the last time it was defeated. It won't make those mistakes again. What mistakes? It moved too fast. Spread too thin. Gave the living time to rally. She shivered despite the warm cloak wrapped around her shoulders. This time it will be methodical. It will hit the wall at full strength. And if the wall falls, the wall won't fall. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise that I'll be standing in front of it when the darkness comes. And I'll be standing when the darkness ends. He put his arm around her. Have faith, Helaena. We've come this far. Faith in what? In us. In what we're building. In the realm we're fighting for. She leaned into him, her silver hair catching the northern wind. You really believe we can win? I really believe we have to try. Whether we win or not depends on what we do with the time we have left. He turned her to face him. And I plan to spend that time doing everything possible to tip the odds in our favor. She kissed him. It was soft, sweet, full of hope despite everything. Then let's go home, she said. Let's prepare. Let's give the darkness the worst fight it's ever faced. The final 2 years were a blur of activity. Dragonglass was mined and distributed throughout the realm. Every blacksmith who could work the material was put to work creating weapons. Training programs spread the Night's Watch's hard-won knowledge to every army in Westeros. The dragons were prepared. Deku worked with every dragon rider, teaching them to fly in formation, to coordinate attacks, to support each other. The great beasts had never been used as a unified air force before. Traditionally, each dragonlord operated independently, often against other dragonlords. Making them work together required patience, diplomacy, and occasionally intervention when ancient rivalries flared. The wall itself was reinforced. Engineers from across the realm came north to study its structure and strengthen its weakest points. New fortifications were built at Castle Black and Eastwatch. The Night's Watch, long neglected, swelled with recruits as the realm finally recognized its importance. And the royal family, the strange, unprecedented arrangement that had developed around Deku, grew stronger. Rhaenyra gave birth first. A boy with green eyes and silver hair, a combination that shouldn't have been possible but somehow was. They named him Viserion, after Rhaenyra's father. Alicent followed 3 months later. A girl, violet-eyed and dark-haired. They named her Mira, a name from Deku's world that Alicent had liked when he'd shared stories of his past. Helena's pregnancy was announced last, though she claimed she'd known about all 3 before anyone else. Her visions had shown her the children years ago, she said, 3 flames that would carry the realm's hope into a new generation. Is it strange? Rhaenyra asked one evening. The 3 women gathered with Deku in the royal chambers, children sleeping nearby. Sharing him. Sharing, all of this. Everything is strange, Alicent replied. A stranger from another world, dragons answering to someone without Targaryen blood, an ancient enemy rising from the north. Our domestic arrangements are hardly the strangest element. That's not an answer. Fine. Yes, it's strange. And no, I wouldn't change it. Alicent looked at Deku, then at Rhaenyra, then at Helaena. I spent my whole life fighting you. Both of you. Treating you as enemies because my father told me to. And now. She shook her head. Now I have sisters. Real sisters. Something I never had before. The wheel breaks, Helaena said softly. Old patterns, old hatreds, they shatter when something new arrives. We're living in the break. We get to choose what comes after. And what comes after? Rhaenyra asked. Whatever we build. Helaena smiled, dreamy and serene. That's the gift he brought. Choice. The ability to be something other than what we were. They sat together in comfortable silence, for people bound by love and circumstances and a world that was about to face its greatest test. The long night came in the 3rd year. There was no warning. One day the sun rose normally, the next it rose weak and watery, barely cutting through a darkness that seemed to cling to everything. The temperature dropped 50 degrees in an hour. Birds fell from the sky, frozen mid-flight. And then the ravens came. The wall has fallen. The others come. All is lost. But all was not lost. Not yet. Because this time, the realm was ready. Dragons launched from every major holdfast in the kingdom. They converged over the riverlands, 15, 20, more, a flight of fire that hadn't been seen since the doom of Valyria. At their head flew Deku, not on dragonback but beside them, one for all blazing at 100%, green lightning marking his passage through the sky. Armies marched north. Every lord who could field troops sent them. The Reach, the Westerlands, the Stormlands, the Riverlands, all of them moving together, a combined force larger than any in recorded history. They met the army of the dead on the plains north of Winterfell. The battle was chaos. The battle was nightmare. The battle was everything Helaena had warned about and worse. The dead came in waves, whites by the 1,000, by the 10,000, by the 100,000. They felt no fear, no pain, no hesitation. They died and rose again unless destroyed by fire or dragonglass. Behind them, directing their movements, came the others, tall, pale, ancient beings with eyes like frozen stars and weapons of living ice. Dragons burned swathes through the enemy ranks. Soldiers fought in rotating lines, fresh troops replacing exhausted ones, dragonglass weapons glittering in the eternal twilight. The living gave ground slowly, buying time for the dragons to circle back, refusing to break despite casualties that would have shattered any normal army. And at the center of it all, Deku fought. He was everywhere. Appearing beside a faltering line to crush a pressing wave of whites. Intercepting an other that had broken through to the command tent. Carrying wounded soldiers to safety at speeds the dead couldn't match. He was a green streak of lightning, a constant presence, a symbol of hope for soldiers who'd never believed in heroes until they saw one in action. But even heroes had limits. The thing that emerged from the heart of the dead army wasn't another. It was something else, something older, the intelligence that had created the others, that had slept beneath the ice for millennia. It looked almost human, but wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. Its presence alone killed nearby whites, as if they couldn't withstand proximity to their own creator. It looked at Deku with eyes that were windows into the void. "You called me," it said. Its voice was cold beyond cold, carrying clearly despite the chaos of battle. Your power sang across dimensions. I heard it and woke. Then I'll put you back to sleep. You cannot. I am entropy. I am the end of all things. Your fire, your will, your hope, they are temporary. I am eternal. Nothing is eternal. Deku dropped into a fighting stance. I've beaten eternal before. He attacked. One for all at 100%. Every technique, every trick, every ounce of power the 9 previous holders had accumulated. He hit the ancient intelligence with everything he had, punches that cracked the air, kicks that shattered frozen ground, energy releases that lit up the eternal darkness like a new sun. It wasn't enough. The thing was strong, not physically, not in any way that Deku could match with strength. It was strong conceptually. It represented endings, negation, the heat-death of everything. Hitting it was like punching an idea. His blows landed but didn't seem to connect. His energy attacks dissipated before reaching it. Even one for all's accumulated will seem to just slide off. You cannot destroy me, it said. You can only delay. And delay is meaningless to eternity. Deku fell back, breathing hard. For the first time since arriving in this world, he felt something like despair. And then the dragons came. All of them. Every living dragon, flying in formation. At their head were the 3 largest, Vagr, Caraxes, Vermithor, but behind them came the rest, young and old, wild and claimed. They descended on the ancient intelligence in a coordinated assault that turned the sky to fire. The thing screamed. Not from pain, Deku understood that instantly. From surprise. It hadn't expected this. Dragons had always been weapons of war between humans, they'd never been turned against it, not like this, not all at once. Now. Rhaenyra's voice cut through the chaos. She was on Syrax, flying close, risking everything. While it's distracted. Give it everything. Deku understood. The dragons couldn't destroy it. He couldn't destroy it. But together, fire and will, accumulated power and living flame, maybe they could do what either alone could not. He gathered everything he had. Not just his own strength, but the strength of everyone who'd ever held one for all. Nana Shimura's courage. Gran Torino's speed. All Might's unbreakable resolve. He felt them with him, felt their wills joining with his, felt the accumulated hope of 9 generations focusing into a single point. And the dragons poured their fire into the same point, creating a vortex of heat and light that burned brighter than the sun. Deku dove into that vortex. He hit the ancient intelligence with a punch that contained everything, one for all at 100%, enhanced by dragonfire, guided by the wills of 9 heroes and powered by the love of 3 women and the hope of an entire world. It was the strongest attack he'd ever thrown, stronger than anything he'd thought possible. The thing shattered. Not destroyed, Deku understood that too. Shattered like ice. Broken into pieces that scattered across the north, into the lands of always winter, into the frozen heart of the world. Pieces that would eventually reform, that would sleep again until something else woke them. But for now, for generations, for centuries, for however long the living had before the cycle began again, it was over. The whites collapsed. The others, deprived of their creator's will, dissolved into mist and were gone. The endless night began to lift, actual sunlight breaking through the clouds for the first time in days. Deku fell from the sky. He woke up 3 weeks later in King's Landing. Rhaenyra was holding one of his hands. Alicent held the other. Helaena sat at the foot of his bed, braiding flowers into a chain. "You idiot," Rhaenyra said when his eyes opened. There were tears on her face. "You magnificent, reckless, self-sacrificing idiot. Did we win? We won. The dead are gone. The realm is saved. You've been unconscious for 20 days, and the maesters weren't sure you'd ever wake up, and I've been trying to run a kingdom while worried sick about you," and, he pulled her down and kissed her. She resisted for a moment, then melted into it. "I'm sorry for scaring you," he said when they separated. "You should be." But she was smiling through her tears. "You should be sorry for a lot of things." Alicent squeezed his other hand. "The realm thinks you're dead. Or dying. Or ascended to godhood, the rumors are very creative. We should probably announce that you're awake before someone starts a religion in your name. Please don't let them start a religion in my name. I make no promises. You literally descended from the sky in a column of green fire and defeated an ancient evil. That's religious founder behavior." Helaena looked up from her flowers. "Not a god. Just a hero. That's what I'll tell them when they ask. Will they listen? Eventually. They always do, eventually." She smiled her dreamy smile. "I've seen it. The statue they'll build, the stories they'll tell. 1,000 years from now, children will hear about the green, the stranger who fell from the sky and taught a broken realm how to stand together. I didn't do it alone. No. You did it with 3 queens, a reformed enemy, a flight of dragons, and an entire realm that chose to trust you." She finished her flower chain and placed it on his chest. "That's what heroes do. They don't win alone. They inspire others to win with them." Deku lay there, surrounded by the 3 women he loved, alive against all odds, in a world he'd never meant to come to but couldn't imagine leaving now. "So what happens next?" he asked. "Next?" Rhaenyra laughed. "Next we rebuild. The north is devastated. The realm is exhausted. There are treaties to negotiate, armies to demobilize, 1,000 details that need attention. And after that?" Alicent squeezed his hand. "After that, we live. We raise our children. We build something that lasts. The wheel keeps turning," Helaena added. "But it turns in a new direction now. Toward light instead of darkness. Toward hope instead of fear." Deku closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of their presence, the weight of everything they'd built together. He'd come to this world by accident. He'd stayed by choice. He'd faced impossible odds and impossible enemies, and somehow, against everything, he'd won. Not alone. Never alone. But he'd won. 5 years later, the statue stood in the courtyard of the Red Keep, a figure in mid-stride, arm raised, lightning crackling around his form. At its base was a simple plaque, "The Green Hero of the Realm, because people were going to die, and I could stop it." Deku stood before it with his children, Viserion, now 4, already showing his father's reckless bravery, Mira, 3.5, with her mother's sharp eyes and her father's kind heart, and the youngest, Kisara, Helena's daughter, 2 years old and already speaking of things that hadn't happened yet. "Is that really you, Papa?" Viserion asked. "Supposedly. I think they made me taller." "You saved the world." "I helped. A lot of people helped. The stories say you did it alone." "The stories are wrong." Deku crouched to his son's level. "No one saves the world alone. That's the first thing you need to learn. The second thing is that saving the world isn't about being the strongest or the bravest. It's about caring enough to try. And the third thing?" "The third thing." Deku smiled. "The third thing is that everyone needs saving sometimes. Even heroes. Even kings. Even green lightning men from other worlds." Rhaenyra approached, Alicent and Helaena flanking her. The Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and the 2 women who ruled beside her in all but name. "The small council is waiting," Rhaenyra said. "Something about trading rights with bravos. Sounds exciting." "It's not. It's incredibly boring. That's why you're coming with us." "I hate politics." "We know. You're terrible at them." Alicent smiled. "That's why you need us." They walked into the Red Keep together, 3 women, 1 man, and 3 children who would someday inherit a kingdom their parents had saved and rebuilt. The wheel had broken. The cycle had ended. Something new was beginning. And Izuku Midoriya, Deku, the hero who'd fallen from the sky, was exactly where he was meant to be. Home. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.